Yeah. Okay, there you go. Turn this way, having to turn this way. This is all field right now. You know, you want you got coming in.
Yeah, just how he wants things to be.
They're a welcoming
And then
environment.
this is not right
And-
now.
and Uniform.
This is.
I said, no matter what
Get to
we
the
talk
gas
about.
station and stuff.
So gas lighting on this is here.
You know why that is?
Okay.
Second here.
I can't even imagine the. Never, he owns them, won't be from.
Okay, this is our monthly Orinoco EDA meeting. It's Tuesday, August 27th. So with that, we'll do a roll call.
All right, Mayor Ekorst.
Here.
Jamie Rothy. Paul Pendergrass.
Here.
Adam Beedling.
Here.
Jeff Shippey.
Here.
Jan Thronson.
Here.
Kathy Gable.
Here.
Everybody here except Jamie. For now.
All right. Make a motion, we approve our August 27th EDA meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Additions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the approval of our July 23rd meeting notes in the packet that was given to you earlier, and there's a copy there now, so. Motion to accept those.
I'll make a motion to accept them. I guess they reading through it,
I'll second that motion.
pretty accurate.
Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? Approved. So tonight we have, some guests here with us tonight, so from the Winseth Engineering Company, so should we go ahead and,
Is there anybody who's here not for the King development discussion? I think everybody's here for that, but just to make sure.
Right.
So, yep, we can move on to the commercial development discussion. And I guess, just so that everyone here knows, there was a group of individuals who were asked to come together just to kind of hear about this project for the first time. And so we did go ahead and do that on the 19th, which is then when we asked everyone to come in today just to describe, a nice commercial development that they're looking at doing on some of our property on the southeast corner of town. So I guess I'll turn it over and I'll let you guys go.
Sure. Yes, so I'm Logan Josem from Winseth, and yeah, Rebecca, as she alluded to, we met with the city. That's probably a week and a half ago or so, just to kind of present our idea and preliminary plan of what we'd like to do on Linda King's property. And I gave everybody a copy of the plan. There's also a large copy on the floor here if we need to talk details, but it was basically approximately 70 acres of land, 44 lots, but the intent would be for commercial development. And so we're asking the city eventually at some point, going through planning commission and council for an annexation request to be in the city limits of Orinoco. And then we're also proposing an amendment to the land use plan to allow for your highway commercial B2 zoning district. So we're gonna, obviously, a portion of that in the southwest corner is already designated for that. We would also be asking for the R2 and the B3 area on the land use plan to also be highway commercial. And so the plan that you have in front of you there, the ones with the actual names on it, Linda and her business partners actually have, can't give you names of who it is, but the ones with the names are the ones that have expressed interest already. And we're just in the preliminary stages here. So it's pretty exciting. So I guess the main reason to be here tonight is just to talk, through this with EDA. We're really asking for your support, looking for ideas, any comments, suggestions that you might have. I'd also be interested in hearing, if there's any funding available for the development side, or even, we talked about some of the uses that are included, and we made a list in that bottom left corner of the things that are permitted within that zoning district, and I think a lot of those, fit what we would like, and what I think the city would like to have, in this area, so. With that, I guess we're here to answer questions and really just hear what you have to say.
Can you summarize, Logan, which part of the development is you're looking to annex or change the usage?
Yeah, so it'd be the whole thing.
The whole thing?
Yep.
Okay, and currently it's set up for commercial, as you said?
Yeah, part of it is, I think, is this the land use plan right here? So it's this piece right here. This piece and then to here. Is that the property line? Yeah, so can't really tell the
Can you see
difference in color. This is already zoned B3, so we're asking to change this and this to B3. This is B2, and then multifamily residential in that orange color. Can't really distinguish the difference between those two colors on that map, but some of that is, it was a pedestrian-oriented commercial district. But we're asking to be highway commercial.
Meaning more commercial concentration, more density?
More density.
More
They
density.
had this for the meeting.
Yeah, and it's really the uses that, are permitted within that. The highway commercial zoning district is consistent, obviously, with the B3 land use plan designation. But those uses are what we feel fits on that corner. And so that's why we're asking for the change to B3, especially given the traffic volume that's on the road there, 100th Street and Minnesota Avenue.
So the possible uses in the lower left-hand corner of your drawing is meant to be for B3 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, like I said, we have interest in a gas station, a grocery store, and a bank. So the four kind of white rectangle boxes that you see, those would be intended for, like the business center, like you would see in Rochester, that would be multi-tenant. But it can include, restaurants and professional offices. We're also open to, daycare, some kind of daycare being out there on this site.
So this would be kind of like the setup where the 3 or 4 buildings that like Five Guys and stuff is
Yeah.
across from Target.
Yep, or like on West Circle Drive, there's some new buildings. Those are 2-story, but it'd be like that. They got Dunkin' Donuts. They've got like a physical therapy building. They've got, so it's set up like that where you would have multiple tenants, probably 4 to 6 tenants
Per unit.
per building, probably. Yep.
Is the plan to do this over time, meaning with the ones you have interest, go first? And
I mean,
then,
we'll fill it up as soon as we can. It really depends on the market and the drive and the interest that we have with the development. We're coming forward to do the whole thing, annex the whole thing and then designate this as highway commercial. So the intent would be to develop it as fast as we could.
Now, who is actually the developer? That's Whitsett?
No, so we're the engineering and architecture firm, representing Linda and the partners here.
Lee is not here, he's
Yeah.
out of Omaha,
Yeah,
Okay.
and so,
and we have interest, Joe has interest in all of those and a few more already that are on that list.
so how it usually works is the landowner is the developer. Sometimes people will go out and buy the land and develop it. Linda already owned the land, and so she wants to develop it. So she's hired us now to help come up with concepts and drawings and help her through the process.
And then single family homes across the street from the strip center?
No, those are small office buildings. Those could be chiropractor, they could be accountant, some kind of as you head north, we're thinking more low intensity commercial types of uses. I think as you get closer to the north, we're proposing some buffer there between this development and the residential development to the north. But, as you head north, the idea is to be, less intense. So smaller, maybe 1 tenant office buildings, daycare. We did talk about in the cul-de-sac there in the northeast corner, maybe some senior living facilities, or senior center or something like that. So the point is, as you move away from the highway and up to the north towards more of the residential area, it would be less intense commercial.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys said that for those, especially with along the road there, that some of those could be made into, take 2 different locations to make it just one
Correct.
building on on a merged set, so it wouldn't necessarily limit them to just those smaller spaces.
Correct.
So it could be just one building on a larger space as well, but it's along there.
Yeah, somebody came in, wanted to buy 2 lots for 1 building, obviously we didn't entertain that. We also talked about, doing a what you call covenant, if you're familiar with that. We'd like to write up some language that says, we want these to be, more elite type businesses that look a certain way, so it'll be more upscale aesthetics. And so that will be something that we'll be bringing forward too. Nothing to control them too bad, or too stringent, but something that says, okay, this is kind of what we expect to be developed here. And then that'll get recorded with the development of the property. So anybody that buys it knows that, okay, this is what they expect.
So it'd be a sale arrangement
Yeah.
for the lots, not a
Yeah.
build and lease?
So I have a question when you come in here.
Yep.
As I look at this, you're coming right off a curb. I see you have 2 inlets. The road is narrow there right now. And, to have that much business, if you had a gas station back in there and a lot of people come and go on, and a lot of traffic, when you turn right off there originally, you try to come on a corner, that's a very bad place to have 2 on a curve, to have 2 directions going with a lot of traffic. I mean, you don't want to turn in. And the bottleneck that you would have there, right there, in my opinion, would be quite a controversy thing to have that happen, because you need to really widen the road. And I don't know how you widen the road on a curve in order to do a left-hand turn lane on both sides of the road.
It could be a roundabout.
A roundabout takes a lot of property. A roundabout takes up a lot of real estate, and the semis coming in, if you watch semis, if a semi just comes in the curve and he's got to enter after he comes into this curve and he's already got to go around like this. My only question is that the 2 roads, and I know you always want to maybe put them across from each other going in there, but I see with that property, I don't know if you'd have to move it down farther, but that access, just because you got the grocery store there.
Yep.
And my next question is lights. And so, and I'm just looking from the aspect of people
You talking,
looking at
you
projects.
talking about lighting or?
Lighting, so in other words, if you have a grocery store there, you got all their lights, their canopy lights on. You got all these buildings, you got a gas station, you got things. And that whole field's been become very lit. And so, and then all those people are gonna want a sign. I would want a sign to recognize my business. And if I wanna sell the lot to say, and I'm not against it, I'm just asking the questions, is that, cause I've sat on these different things and high mass lighting, because those parking lots for a grocery store, lights get up taller. Above the building and light, people say, well, geez, now I look out my window, it looks like daylight all night. To me, lights are security, but to some people, they want darkness or whatever. So I guess as I see that, I see kind of a bottleneck coming in 2 ends, and it isn't too far. We'll see what happens down here with them opening up a narrow road coming in and out of the Dollar General, and see what the traffic pattern is gonna be there as far as the access, because
I
someone's,
think we're planning on at least burnouts and.
but I'm just saying that as we plan along here, and so you're not waiting the money wise, I'm just throwing this out as ideas that I see that, and then if you go to the other side of the road, same thing. Maybe not so much on the highway side, but the other side, I'm taking that as the other cornfield on the other side. The higher light mass over there is definitely gonna affect the neighborhoods.
I'm on your same base there, because what's gonna happen down here with, what I picture happening down here with the Dollar General is we get 2,500 cars a day, that's the count through Orinoco. And the day we start getting busy on a Thursday or Friday afternoon, when everybody's headed out to Lake Zumbro, and somebody's gonna stop with a boat trailer and gonna try to make a left-hand turn and no turn lane to get in the gas and go and start backing stuff up. I can picture that.
Well, now, isn't that kind of, just asking, isn't that kind of the Department of Transportation's problem? Now,
It would be the city of Orinoco, because they are, because this is the city of Orinoco town road out here.
Yep.
And so the infrastructure of all
not a
that,
highway.
no, this coming down the road here, it used to be a county road, then they sent that back to the city of Orinoco. And so this is that whole road there is the city of Orinoco's responsibility. So if you, with a developer, something that you wanna do is if you're gonna widen the road and everything else, then you gotta talk to the developer and who's gonna pay for the right-hand turn lanes and
Yeah.
the repaving and all that stuff. I mean, that's just a cost, I mean, just something to think about as they do this plan, and I'm not against any of it. But I just wanna bring up from my standpoint, what I see. I hate to see people spend money on something and then you come back and goes, well, now we gotta change that. It's gonna cost you X amount to write that in. So that's only my questions tonight, sir. It's just my questions to everybody. To thinking that my concern is lighting. If I own a building, I wanna be able to put my sign on the building. And it's my understanding of the lit signs, and I've heard about Glenn's, I've heard about the other people being able to have their signs and people are restricting people for their signs and their business and people go, well, how can I advertise my business if they don't even know where I'm at and my sign is smaller?
Says, and we will probably have a sign on the highway side that everybody can put.
Oh, but I'm just saying, but when you do that, then you gotta go through, because it's still the city of Orinoco, that's a higher sign. Glenn's people like to have a higher sign up in the air to advertise their business. So the city might have to, and I don't know all the ordinance, but they might have to change the ordinance in order to put that high sign to say the grocery store, the bank and everything out on the highway. They would have to come through the city, the mayor would know more about that than I do, but city ordinance, they would have to change that in order to put that, when you come down on Highway 63 out there at Fleet Farm and everything, they got the big signs up there. And the city of Rochester would not let U-Haul put a sign up there because there's certain business, but they allowed Pepsi to put their sign up. I sat on that and I thought, no, wait a minute. Pepsi can have a sign, but the property that U-Haul built on is zoned a little different. And they did not allow U-Haul to put a lighted sign out to say it's U-Haul. So these are all things when we go at it, that to put the ducks in a row so people can see what's going on. I'll be quiet for a little bit.
Well, the sign ordinance, I believe if you look at it or have reviewed it, I think it's 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's the current sign, but it's all spelled out in
Yeah.
the pedestal, wall signs and all the different signs is in that sign ordinance, so.
Okay.
And we'll obviously spend time,
Sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say, we'll obviously spend time looking
Sure.
at all that.
We're also in the process of rewriting that.
Another comment too, and this kind of relates to what Jan was bringing up. I'm assuming you've will do a traffic study based on the amount of
Yeah,
potential uses and your stores and number of visitors and residents that will impact this whole lane of traffic to and construction and what's going to take. So,
I heard what you said. You have some good points there. We've thought of those points
Okay.
also. If you look at the grocery store on the map that you currently have in front of you as an example, and the feeling is whenever you get everybody on the west side, that's the grocery store side, right? Okay, they're all gonna want everything you said, the signage and the highway frontage and all that stuff. That's why the gas stations and the grocery stores kind of want to be there. All the other side, they could be more low key and they don't need that signage and stuff like that. People will find those places on that side. But where the grocery store is now is probably the way it's laid out, because you can't have another entrance off of 100th Street besides the one that's there.
Right.
So all these ideas that we had to get in there that direction are out. Where the grocery store is now is probably the best place for a gas station for all the things that you were talking about that make a lot of sense. So that could happen, and if that gas station wants to be a bigger one, they could take up more land on 100th Street to get that 52 frontage on that west side.
Have you thought, and my question in the group, because when Quick Trip comes in, it can be a gas store or in the smaller towns like this, the grocery store actually becomes part of the gas station. Hy-Vee sells groceries, but they also have a gas station. And so it's one of those things that if the grocery store comes in, they might want to behoove that they become, you move the gas station over by the grocery store and they become a grocery store gas station by the same people run by. It's just a thought process.
No, good points.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say too, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell on the map here, the site plan, but there's 600 feet between 100th Street Northwest and that intersection. Doesn't look like it on there, but if you
Okay.
scale it
That's
out.
where it is.
Yeah, so, and then beyond that, I think it's 1,400 feet from that first access coming off of 100 to the second one. So you can't really visualize that on a piece of paper,
Right.
but it's actually pretty far away. And working with Joe Palin, obviously, as a city engineer, these are the things that we've kind of talked about already for site distances and access points and things like that.
Which is a good thing for you to explain, because then when the residents of Orinoco start seeing this and coming back and doing things and working and everything else, then that's a good thing to explain, that the footage wise, even though it looks like this way,
It looks
is closer than what it is, and it really is farther down the road than what it is. And so that's something that if you put a foot, I'm just trying to say is that you can answer a lot of questions by people reading something and say, oh, I'm not gonna get that.
Yeah, and then with the covenants, I think Linda was talking about, I think we can address the signage and lighting for both of those. Having cutoffs so that it shines down rather than out. There's things that can be done to help alleviate some of that.
On the east side also, we're having a large buffer zone and there are some natural buffer zones there too. So there won't be much visibility to the housing.
Right. Yeah. That's what you have to sell to the neighbors
Yeah, good point. So that ravine, I don't know if you can
behind,
see,
not so much me, but the neighbor.
37,
We have a
35.
big hill there and this kind of thing, that's staying.
Which ravine are you talking?
So we're kind of right in the middle of the development on the north side there.
Yeah, that middle building is in the middle of a ravine there.
The blue is a pond.
Is it a current pond?
No, that'll be part of our stormwater
But
management.
right in here's where the ravine comes off the road.
Yeah, so we're gonna
Right
take
down
some of it, but we're gonna leave this.
Okay.
And then we're gonna extend this buffer area up here on the north side.
Yeah,
So this is all gonna.
This is gonna be the extension of the road that comes out of Cedar.
Correct. Yep, so we're connecting to that. Okay. We have to. They require connectivity to, that road's actually already in.
Yeah, this road's already there.
Yeah, so we have to connect to that to extend that out. But the idea is to keep these areas as drainage easements so that you can't touch them.
Okay.
Where's the current access road to the sewer down to the outlots from Cedar Woodlands to, is that
Cedar
farther?
Woodlands,
So the,
this is the road here.
Yeah, but there's
gas
like where they've been entering in to do all the work, I'm just trying to reference.
into Cedar Woodlands.
You know how they've been accessing to do the work in the lot in the back, is it over here?
I think it's in the north, more in the north.
Farther north.
I think it's.
I'm just trying to get myself referenced to where things are at.
Yeah.
Just looking at the grades,
Sure.
there's really no way.
This is
they
the
can-
on.
Yep. I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late. Could you give me just a couple of things of context?
Sure.
So the request that's gonna be coming forward is to change the R2
Yep.
to a
B3.
B3.
Yep, highway commercial on the whole thing.
Okay,
West side is already B3 on the land use plan.
sure.
There's some R2 and then there's some B2 pedestrian commercial on that southeast corner. We're asking for highway commercial on the whole thing.
Okay. Which is, I mean, there's some problematic pieces to that and normal zoning through, and I see that you have a buffer here, but it seems like some discussion, with what are some improvements? Sorry, say it again.
There will be a big buffer zone on that whole east side.
I think better describing what big buffer zone means would be really important, so that the neighbors and
And
the,
we're doing sidewalks, we're doing plantings, tree plantings. This is a high scale development.
sure,
Well, we're proposing 30 feet right now.
30 feet.
At least all along the top until it hits that ravine. And that ravine is staying, except for the kind of that southern edge for the road, but otherwise it's all gonna stay. Where it kind of narrows out, it'll be a minimum of 30 feet.
Okay. Can we talk about sidewalks for a second?
Sure.
So I think that's been something that's come up in lots of discussions throughout other developments, is to create a more walkable community.
Yep.
So is that what's designed in these current roads here?
Yep.
Is there any sidewalk access, or there's a fair amount of people that bike and run along, Minnesota?
Yep.
Is there's nothing currently planned for that or any other?
Just sidewalks. I know there's a trail on the comp plan, so we could connect somewhere. I don't know if it's in that ravine area, but I think it showed kind of a diagonal line going right
Yeah.
through the development. So, that could certainly be part of the plan too, is to include trail connectivity.
Sure.
Yep.
I think that, with creating more resources for the community, I would imagine you're going to start to see people, if sidewalks are here, then you're gonna have pedestrian crossing
Yep.
across Minnesota. So that would be interesting. I'm assuming it would show up in your traffic study
Right.
to understand how we're calming traffic, because I think it's 50 to 40, but it doesn't change to 40 till farther along.
Yes.
And having kids on bikes or other humans crossing that.
You see, this is 50 now to here.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that would show up on the traffic study, but some recommendations on
Yeah.
what that looks like. I think too, lighting will be really important to know they've come up with new creative lighting and how to make sure that it's facing down and not up, and we're not having excessive lighting pollution, especially because of the neighbors. I would also be interested in, what the noise mitigation strategy is for this while there's that buffer. With this amount of extra traffic, I think the neighborhood's gonna experience a considerable amount of noise.
I like the idea of the backage roads, 'cause that's instead of frontage roads on that.
Yeah.
That's something that was discussed back in 2006 when they brought in this,
Yeah.
in the,
So Jamie, just a point of reference up in the upper right-hand corner, there's 1, 2, 3 rectangles. So those first three, that I believe that all borders an outlaw, and that's where lift station 4 is at.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
It's all
Right.
open area right
Okay.
now, so.
which three rectangle you talking
These ones
about?
here.
So if you go over to where Cedar Drive would continue, so there's that one house in Norman Lane.
Yep.
And then there's a path that goes into a house, you can just see it in that second block. And the rest of it's all out to the north, so just a point of reference.
Yeah.
So as you are looking through our codes, you may have seen what we call the OACC guidelines.
Okay.
Which identifies the perimeter, the style of the buildings, the frontage, the amount of glass, amount of brick.
Yep.
It's all spelled out in those ACC guidelines, so
Those are the aesthetic requirements for how, we would,
that's important to look
we
at.
would mirror that and then maybe beef it up just a little bit
Sure.
if we needed to, but yeah, we would certainly start with that as a.
So the landscaping that you saw around the Dollar General market store.
Yep.
Is, I don't want to say it's over, but it does really look nice with all that landscaping. And I think that would be kind of a expectation.
Sure.
As you start to look at this individual throughout the whole property to kind of complement everything.
Yeah.
That we've started with Dollar General.
Sure.
If you look at the Glenn's Coach.
Yep.
There is a perimeter around that. It's made up of shrubs and trees.
We actually
as
did
well,
that
so-
too. That was our project.
Oh, yes, okay, so you're familiar with the
Yep.
OACC guidelines, so you're, okay, good, thank you.
I have another just follow-up question because of the request for the zoning change. Have you modeled R2 along this backside instead of businesses and going to B3?
Yeah, it's not something that the client is interested in. To be honest with you, the traffic counts would go up. I mean, if you're talking like apartments or something like that, there would be probably more traffic than what we're proposing on a lower commercial scale for office buildings.
Because B2 it's currently R2 right now.
Yeah, R2.
So that's townhomes for
Fourplex.
fourplex.
Yes. And those are 10 trips minimum per day per unit approximately.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 40 trips per day per building.
Mm-hmm.
And that'd be a lot of trips. So, I mean, we did talk about it, and on the residential side, I think maybe looking more at senior living and assisted living rather than apartment buildings. That's kind of the intent. So that's why we were asking for the highway commercial. And if, we talked about too, Joe had an idea that, we could leave some of that R2 just to leave it as a buffer. So we have to talk about that too. Obviously, it would never be developed as R2 because you wouldn't be able to develop in a drainage easement,
Sure.
so we talked about that too.
Yeah, it's really difficult to get behind supporting the R1 and then having the sorry, I'm looking at it again. With your the high density business. So you said B3.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like there's probably some examples that could be helpful to have when you have conversation with the community.
Yep.
But knowing that those are wooded acre lots, the majority of them are,
Yep.
and the integrity of the neighborhood and how is that?
Yeah.
Doesn't just feel like you're butting up right next to a big commercial zone, I think will be incredibly important.
Are you familiar with the Galleria in EDA and what kind of shops are in there?
I am.
we're going more on the east side
Sure.
or that type of thing. The daycare center wants a back lot. They don't want a highway frontage because
Sure.
of little kids.
Safety. Yep.
Okay, and, you know, things along that line.
Yeah.
I think in the covenants, we can address some of that.
Sure.
And kind of control what type, first we'll show the uses that we want.
Mhm.
And then we could even designate, you know, on the north side, these are the commercial uses that we'd like to see that fit into the neighborhood a little bit better. You know, like daycare, senior living, you know, smaller scale commercial.
Mhm.
Again, that's really the idea. The larger scale commercial that needs the exposure will be, you know, along 100th Street, along the highway, on the west side.
Sure.
Kind of transition as you go to the north.
And I don't recall, but I remember when we were looking at them before, B2 typically has a neighborhood benefit. Is that still right? And it's laid out in the code. Like it's often recommended that it's like neighborhood benefit
Right.
businesses.
Yep.
Um,
I mean, it's labeled as pedestrian
that's
commercial.
what
So that's what that.
And that's what we're
that is.
going for.
Chiropractor,
Yep.
dentist.
Yeah, like the strip of, you know, businesses, that could be ice cream, that could be coffee, that could be
Sure.
donuts. The idea is to have people that live in Orinoco, if they work in Rochester, they come back here, they stop at this grocery store before they go home. In the morning, they stop here for coffee and donuts, you know, and bring that viability to this spot and to Orinoco. That's the idea.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that and appreciate the conversation. I think still what's challenging is that you have single family homes next to the B3 and that's difficult. So working through what that physically looks like or what
Yeah.
being able to model that.
He's showing the B3 is what we're oriented businesses.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
Mm.
So then, you know, we are putting a pond on the north side, that's more for drainage, but you know, that'll also create another buffer. And then with the 30-foot strip that we have and then not touching that ravine as much as possible.
Mhm.
You know, there are some people that are interested in the convention center or, you know, for weddings and things like that too. So again, those will be maybe the lower, more intense uses on that north side, but yeah, we're trying to accommodate all that as much as possible. So
Sure,
thank you.
absolutely. I mean, attracting business to the Orinoco community is really important
Well-
and making sure that it feels that it flows right, that,
Right.
you know, and I think that's why, I don't know, we're going through some updating. But that's why we have R1 to R2 and we're kind of moving it through and we're removing those things. I think we
Your
start to
city,
question the integrity of the neighborhoods.
your city engineer also wanted sidewalks and planning.
Sure.
And that, I mean, that's part of it too. I mean, this is really twofold. We want this to become part of the community. We also want it to be a destination for the people on the highway. But the businesses that are going on that north side, we want to appeal to the neighbors as well. Like, we want them to walk with their kids to get ice cream, you know, or so, you know, those are all things that we've talked about too.
Well, the ones on the north side there, they look like they're more like standalone businesses, one per building. type
Correct.
thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So those would be your single off, like a dental office, for example, just your single standalone building.
Daytime hours.
Daytime hours. Yep.
So my question on that side, because you would have to develop that road on the backside.
Yeah.
So my question, and I'm just gonna throw this out, lighting, different noise, everything else. If you put the road on the front side and flop the businesses to the back and the parking lots to the front,
Does it fall within the OACC guideline?
what's that?
Does it fall?
Okay, okay, so I'm just asking.
Guidelines.
Okay, so when I go down each lot, and I put a bill in each one of those lots, the distance, and I'm not gonna tell you the distance, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you got 12 driveways coming off that road in very short distance to this. It's like I'm driving down the neighborhood, in the residential neighborhood, and I'm pulling in that many businesses coming out. In other words, I've got, and that's what I see here, and I could be wrong, but that's why I was wondering is if those
people-
businesses could be,
I had him do it that way, is some, a lot of people want bigger lots, but there are a few that want smaller lots.
right,
So they have an option to get 2 or 3 lots rather than one, but
and what
like, Starbucks probably would want 1.
right, so I see when they do some of that too, is what I've seen in the cities in different areas, and we're not Minneapolis, but anyway. usually when I see buildings like that, they almost build the businesses to look like a house. I mean, and kind of like, it really fits in to the neighborhood. It's not just a square building sticking out. It's more of a design to fit into the architectural
We
thing.
will have architectural review,
Okay, I mean,
and there'll be, yes,
Okay.
we'll be handling that, and we're not gonna allow. You got some businesses in Orinoco that are sort of junky.
well, I'm just saying is
We're
that,
not allowing any of
okay.
that.
Well,
Okay, in our covenants.
And I think the covenants too could be adjusted between the northern side and the southern side, to say, you know, that is the type that it's gonna have to be those, you know, those commercial businesses that are being used just by the residents essentially versus the ones that are more the destination.
Right, I mean, and so in some of the neighborhoods, like I said, when I drive up Minneapolis, Eden Prairie, different things, even their signs, their advertising signs are all bricked up.
Mhm.
And they're all done because they want it to look more aesthetically pleasing as you drive through. And so I just trying to answer the questions, but you guys have thought this out, so if someone asks me, I say, well, it's all been thought out, and this is how, if you sell something, this is what they plan on doing, it's just not a hodgepodge where,
I've lived here my whole life. I'm a former Vandal Road near Rochester. I live on 100th Street on the other side of the highway. And this is something I have to live with, and I have to personally be proud of it. I've done a lot of developments, and yes, we do have, I do believe in strict controls.
Do you have, can you furnish some of the projects you've done? I think that would be interesting to see.
I'm under confidentiality, but I'll tell you this much, when I'm not, I'm
Okay,
doing a $500 million project out in Wyoming right now. One building, $500 million in a big development.
so you have a resume.
Or
So you haven't just lived in Orinoco for this many years, you had a business,
I lived on Vandal Road.
okay, in
I'm a
Rochester.
Vandal, okay, my
Okay.
name. And
is Tom your brother? Who
I've
was,
lived here my whole life.
Tom was your brother? Tom Van?
Tom Vandal was my brother.
I
Okay,
know Tom very well.
Tom passed away.
Yes, I know that.
I'm the youngest sister.
Could you comment on your phases of how you plan to approach this project?
I think, as far as city process goes, we want to do the whole thing, at once. And I think it really depends on the market and where, what lots people want to buy. We did talk about not allowing somebody to, buy lot 9, for example, then jump to lot 12 and then jump to lot 16, or something like that. They'd have to fill them in as they go. And that really is, Linda and her partners that would control that, but they don't want the hodgepodge
Sure.
either.
Okay.
So,
So would you do the south first or both at the same time, roads, north, south?
yeah, we talked about doing, the west side first. I guess we haven't really talked in detail a whole lot about the phasing part. Of course, cost is a big part of that, and putting in the roads and the infrastructure, goes along with that. So I think the focus is on the west side for now.
Okay.
Yep. Am I correct? Did I say anything wrong? West side,
But there are some that we know of right now.
right, that also on the east side. So, if we get enough people that are interested, obviously, we would.
But most of them on the east side are not the high traffic.
To Jamie's point, and in light of recent development challenges for people, I would highly advise you to get involved with the community as much as absolutely possible relevant to these projects. And that buffer zone will probably be the biggest sticking point that I would say that people will want. And even when you think you have enough, you might want to put more. And when you have enough,
With the city engineer.
right. I'm just trying to be as an EDA, we're here to help. We're here to make things happen.
Your buffer yards are going to be a big concern, I think, from a lot of people. So I don't know if 30 is enough. I mean, I don't know if there's a suggestion or not, but
I would say planning and zoning might be able to help a little bit more with that.
I think whatever the suggestion would be, somebody will want it bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
what I'm saying.
30 came from your city
Yeah, that was,
engineer.
Joe had mentioned that, so that's why we took the 30 feet into consideration.
I would say that sometimes when presenting to some of the groups, maybe having an example of what a 30-foot looks like in practice.
Okay.
So they could kind of see just how much light that dims, how much visualization that it changes. I think sometimes that could be very helpful in this situation.
I think the good thing though is that you're being intentional about keeping high traffic, high lighting, high density, towards the road.
Yeah.
And then the east side, maybe doing daytime intentionally
Right.
so that it's a quiet, that is itself creates more buffer because it's quiet in the evening and,
Correct.
when everybody's home with families and things like that.
Create more harmony with the neighbors too, hopefully.
Yeah, if you look at the, like north of Minnesota Avenue, with those businesses, most likely I'm guessing probably not gonna be open after 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. So you compare the quietness of a commercial versus a large R2 project where traffic is coming and going all the time, all hours of the night. A commercial is probably gonna be more quieter than even an R2 plan too, so.
I would think you're absolutely correct. I think that that's a selling point for your thing is that on that side is R2 is I've got fourplex, I got things going on. Where this is, the neighbors are there during the day, on the weekend, they're gone. It's well maintained because it's a commercial lot, there's mowed, it's landscaping is nice. I mean, I look at the positives of certain development coming in that it's well taken care of and it's well represented. And the biggest point, this is the head end of Orinoco. How you design this coming into the town will represent Orinoco. And when you put this out as you turn off straight, and then you look at it and go, wow, this is pretty nice coming into Orinoco. It's been well thought out. Your design has been well thought out where it is. This makes sense to me because I personally see that you've got 3, 4 different things here that some people are willing to invest. And the start of this one, it's gonna take off. If the economy depends what everything is, but it might just take right off and really surprise a lot of people. Just how nice it could be.
Mhm. Especially when it's just, there's not, and I go to Rochester at least every day, and you don't have anything between here and Rochester except for that 65th Street exit.
Right.
And then once you get off on the one to Walmart, it's just congested with all kinds of traffic, and so, no, I think,
What we're thinking of is to serve the community.
yeah.
And you asked me for one development that I worked on, if you're familiar with Bandle Hills on Bandle Road.
No, but I will become.
65th Street, by where Quick Trip is.
Okay.
It'd be south of there or east.
What do you call it? Bandle
Bandel.
Hills.
CINDEL.
Right on Bandle Road.
Right down there, just to this side of the old Bandel school.
Used to be Bandle Hatchery.
I'll check it out. No, it's fascinating to me.
Bandel Patrick School.
And then I
Way
did
back
want
when.
to bring attention on your maps, on the north where it's actually gonna be connecting to the other residential areas. One thing that we had talked about previously is the amount that's actually going to assist the residential development with their traffic, because it's gonna provide that other way for them to get out when they wanna come out of town. So they're gonna have a more direct access to get out to the highway than they do currently, because they'd have to go on Minnesota and come all the way around. But now they're gonna have a little bit shorter of an opportunity, and it'll give people a chance not to always be crossing back and forth across each other, but it might actually make that traffic flow work a little bit better. I don't know if that's gonna be part of the study with the, So there'll be some information coming in on that to kind of help, with some of the discussions that I'm sure will be coming from the residential, groups.
And then there are people who probably see that road and get scared.
Mhm.
There's a road and they're gonna increase traffic, but honestly, I don't see anybody using that other than the people that live there.
Right, because there isn't anything up there other than
Right.
residential.
People that are gonna come to this development and have a way to get out in every direction and they don't really have a need to go
Mhm.
unless they're lost.
Yep.
Or Google takes them there for some reason, but I don't really see that being utilized. But
We have to be careful that we're not like making generalizations, because I think that there have been other neighborhoods where they've built these pieces around them and people cut through the neighborhoods. Being from this neighborhood,
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that that I live in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, our children are all running, biking, there's no paths. They're on the street every single day, on all of these streets. So it is dense, families hanging out and spending time and going from neighbors to neighbors.
Yeah.
So while I can see the benefit of saying you can get out of the neighborhood quicker this way, there's also new access for new drivers to be driving through those roads where kids are playing. And we know that there's more development to happen around it, it's part of growth.
Yep.
But I think we have to, when we're doing these traffic studies, to really understand what are we encouraging, what are we not encouraging? And I think, Jeff, like you said, I think it'll be incredibly important to work as closely with the neighborhood as possible to understand and not make assumptions about what are businesses that may benefit, like spend some time. I know we just got done with the study, which I'm sure you're aware of, and see those people, like the recommendations from the surveys. But oftentimes in all developments across the country, people just draw their circle of how many feet they have to do and reach out to those families. And I think something to consider is to really engage the HOAs. They're very active in this area, and spend time with the neighbors so they can help inform, because that will help this be successful. And I think that will be an incredibly important step to do.
Grant's a neighbor also.
He's in the neighborhood as well.
I got one question for you. So when you said that road that connects to Cedar Point, and that's kind of what Rebecca was just referring to, when she was talking about that access, is that, did you say that's a requirement to connect to that? It is.
Because it's already put in, it's stubbed into the property line.
Okay.
So that's why they do it. So all utilities, including infrastructure for roads and all that, go to the property line. So we're obligated to connect to that.
Okay.
That's
And
it.
you were,
Because that's,
And I mean, honestly, it's probably something the
No, that's-
developer
that's what I'm
wouldn't
just
want,
asking
because
if it
that's
was.
cost, that's extra cost for them. You know, so if that's something the neighbors are opposed to, I mean, I don't think Linda would object, honestly, because it's less cost, but we're obligated to connect, and that was a city requirement. That was one of the
and
things.
you were looking at doing some community engagement.
Yep.
So that is something that they have already talked about, is doing some community engagement. So that process will be happening specific to this project as well.
I think that's something that could be helpful in the discussion, is to look at, it's just, I think what's challenging is you have, like, if you look at the last lot where, I'm gonna say Kanika, because that's where her and her family live, is the last lot, R1, right before your spot comes here. And originally there were so many feet of R2. And I think, like, what's the measurement, like you said, from that resident to the nearest business? So you have the pond.
Right.
And areas. Will be important, because that used to be all R2.
Yep.
So I think when you think about the integrity of the neighborhood and why people purchased that land, they were underneath the assumption that it would be R2. So if we're switching it, what is like that dimension might be helpful.
About 400 feet
Okay.
from that road starts to that first building there.
Okay,
Just using the scale, it's on the map.
there, thank you. And that might be something to become prepared for.
If you look at the backside, I'm just doing the rough estimate. We are not moving the hills. We are not taking that down.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a natural barrier.
Yeah.
Probably across 3/4 of it.
So where does that bank road come out at? Does that come back out on county, or does that come back out on the county road?
No, that's butting up to Mark Keen's property to the east.
Right, but I'm saying it butts up to it, but it's gotta come out it's gotta come out to the county road.
No, it's gonna.
Just like the road that comes.
Oh, if the
here.
road, it's a road to nowhere, you stop, so it's not an access out, so my point, eventually, regardless, as you said, as the development goes on, it will be another access road from there out to the county road.
That's once Mark Keen develops his property.
Right, but I'm just saying is that would be.
And that was it.
So then the lines on either side, so. In the neighborhoods, everybody, you talked about, so to get to these businesses, you got your road. So is there a bike path that the businesses have to maintain to come down? In other words, if you have this road coming down Minnesota Avenue and say they want to walk to it, is there going to be a path a bike path or a sidewalk along Minnesota Avenue, south, through this whole development that people walk down to. I hear a lot about the neighborhoods, they say the kids are on the street and there are no sidewalks, well,
Well, they've already told us in the development, we have to put in sidewalks.
so, but where would your sidewalk be? So it would be on next to, is it a sidewalk or is it a bike path that goes by Minnesota Avenue? Because when you get by your property, they make you put that in, it goes nowhere. My point is that you put it in, I can walk it, and now I gotta cross the street to do something. It goes nowhere. Then now I walk off your property and I'm walking back on the road because there is no bike path or there's no path for anybody else to do that. I mean, they make you do it, but it goes in the sense of nowhere.
That would have to be.
Well, no, I'm just explaining this, that you do that because the questions I hear from the families and everything else in here all the time is our kids in C Street go out and shovel a sidewalk in the winter like I gotta do every winter. If all those developments that would have made them put sidewalks in front of all those, they would have sidewalks for the kids to walk on, they'd be shoveling them every snowstorm and salting and doing anything else like I do in Rochester. And you guys don't have that problem, so the kids have to walk on the street, but as Orinoco grows, as we build these walk paths, again, I'm gonna say to the resident, well, how am I gonna get there a walk there? Well, that walk path has to continue on somewhere, otherwise I'm back.
Well, generally, when it comes to residential developments, the way I've seen done in Rochester and other places, hauling fill and stuff for developments. Generally, the person erecting the house on the property has to connect to the neighbor's sidewalk. It's only for the length of his property, so when it gets sold, it'll get filled in.
I understand that, but I'm just saying is that when it gets to this point on Minnesota Avenue, how are the people walking to get to your bike path? They're walking on a road to get to your, I know, I understand.
That would be the city's
I totally
responsibility.
understand that, but I'm just,
You know.
I'm trying to go through as I try to sell something to people and they say, we have bike paths, but yet our streets don't have it, but yet we're doing it here.
Jeff, does that show up in the WFB work, like the planning work that you guys are doing for engagement right now with the new?
I was going to comment on that too. So I think we've mentioned about this, our 151 code is being reviewed now and reconfigured, reformatted and everything. So because of the topic of sidewalks and paths, what I envision, because what R1 is here, but R2 might be a situation that could see a path in there from R2 going up north and then ultimately going across the road into what Hamilton's project is. And that path there could be extending through Hamilton's project too. So if there was a path that comes out of our new 151 codes, you may be, as a developer, you may be looking at some type of path extending off of that R2 above your property line into the development and meanders through here or someplace. I don't know where it goes. But
Legally, I can't go off from our property.
what's that?
I have no jurisdiction if it's not our property.
Well, I understand. But I'm saying, but the new codes may
That's why I think.
require
he said we
R2
had
would be
put
due to
in
the north to
sidewalks.
have it, so. It's a good point. I think we need to keep that in mind. At this point, maybe we don't know what it's gonna look like, but I think it's a good point to be aware of, so.
Who maintains that path?
Depends where it is.
If it's a city trail, it's a city.
And this development would be the property owners responsible to remove the snow off that sidewalk or path?
The sidewalk would be the responsibility of the property owner.
Okay, but if it's a path, by their,
The city.
I just, my question is
And with that, we keep talking about paths from the future land use map. That is a future land use map. Those are not set in stone. There may not even be a walking path, as we've had with other ones. There's a path down there that residents got upset about because it goes behind their property. And we have to, again, tell them it's not a set in stone thing. There may not be a walking path. So, but I think you need to be clear when you're telling other residents path versus sidewalk. The sidewalks, yeah, absolutely, they would be the business owners. There may not be a biking path or trail or something like that, because there's gonna be sidewalks. Those are, while they're similar in your mind, they're also two separate things, so make sure you're clear on
I
that.
just wanna know how they're gonna get to the businesses to walk to.
And unfortunately, the city didn't plan ahead when they were doing their stuff decades ago, and there are no sidewalks to connect to. So it's, you know, the sidewalk to nowhere, the Shel Silverstein sidewalk.
Well, and that's why these land use plans, like, they're designed just like a comprehensive plan is to be updated and be reviewed and changed. So I mean, those changes are only natural that some will happen at some point into those land use plans, but not to say that there needs to be major changes of any sort, but it is fairly normal to update those. Do you know what kind of community engagement you guys were looking at doing? Just to kind of give these guys an idea?
We haven't talked about it. Obviously, we want to get to the neighborhood, so, you know, I don't know. There's a location nearby that, you know, we could talk to somebody for our venue to host something. Or, you know, here, at City Hall, or and the weather and what it is. What's that?
Two Sisters will be open soon, I think.
Oh, yeah, something like that, yeah, you know, that's typically how we do it.
They would enjoy the business.
Yeah, right.
I think it'd be good for community engagement to be, to heard from both sides, the east side, west side as well, the
Sure.
Riverwood Hills, it's 105 units. And, but of course, it'd be open to the public, but I think we should try and reach out to the west side as well as on the east side to downtown.
It's a matter of process. Do we reach out to you guys for that information, or is that on our own to reach out?
We can share the background information as much, yeah.
So Ryan, is this something that you can, because they brought this forward for the community, is there something that we could put on that's been brought to our attention on our webpage or on our thing to let the community know that this is being, okay, well, like I say, that this is known and being talked about, so everyone's on board, or so they're the opportunity, whether they show or not, it's up to them, but then they at least understand kind of the preliminary, could ask some questions like we're asking and get it off on a good start on the right
We're
foot.
not trying to blindside anybody. That's
No, I'm not,
why-
I'm not.
Thank you.
Right.
There's also another website that, that 151 code project generated called Growing, it's either Grow Orinoco or Growing Orinoco,
WSP site.
the WSB site.
Or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that may be of benefit because that's their entire goal is the community engagement and as projects arise to be able to have it all go to one central location versus once it goes to the city, it almost becomes, for lack of a better term, official.
Right.
Whereas right now it's preliminary.
Brought that up. I mean, this is really preliminary at this point. Obviously, we've done a lot of research on topography and where the roads could go and all those things. My only hesitation would be to, and I ran into this before, show the public this plan, and by the time we get to the end, it's totally different. You know, because of the engagement with the city or public works or the neighbors, and then they say, well, I thought this was gonna go here and it's not showing, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I think transparency is important too, so you know, there's a fine line. So I guess my suggestion is, I don't care if you put it out there as long as Linda's okay, but let people know that this is the beginning stages, like we're just in the preliminary stages. So, you know, we're encouraging feedback, you gotta give somebody something to look at, right? So they can start commenting, and that's really as far as we've gone. And which is why we're here tonight too, to hear from
And
you
there would be
guys.
advertising leading up to the community event too, that would also let people know like, hey, this is where we're gonna be looking. Please come and talk to us. We want to hear what you have to say about this particular area. So I think that'd be another thing that just gives people a little bit of extra time.
And from the city, we'll work with them to help advertise, but like you said, we don't want to push anything out there that's going to create confusion later on down the road. It's up to them what they want to kind of put out there now. And we'll work with Linda and her company to help promote those events to make sure that people can get out there.
I think it will be a combination of you and Joe.
Yeah.
Put that up.
You know, again, I think the next step is go to the planning commission, but not as a public hearing,
Nope, yep.
right? Just to present this and say, I would like your guys' feedback too. I mean, that's really where we're at right now. Just trying to gather feedback, so.
So based on the conversations you heard here tonight, you know, I think traffic study is a key one. I don't know if that's something you want to be more prepared to respond to those questions before you
Would that be
go to the
something-
public information.
Absolutely. I think that's probably gonna be a requirement for our submittal.
Yeah. I think DOT would like to hear that too.
Yeah, and actually, we've already started working on some
Then
of
the
that.
planning commission meets September 12th next, I believe,
September 12th.
second Thursday of the month.
When I,
But we want you to be ready you're ready to share that stuff.
Right.
With your timeline.
And I honestly, I don't think we'd be ready with that information for the September 12th meeting. It would just be community engagement, kind of, you know, I want to hear from you unless you think we need to have that information at that point. I think that would,
It's, I think it's,
I mean, we would go
I
back.
think it's
in
up to
front
you
of the-
because you have to respond to the questions. And so
Yeah,
how prepared you are versus now versus.
yeah. And honestly,
They
I
will
think
be
it's-
asking.
yeah, they probably will. Honestly, at this stage in the development, it's kind of early. I know that we'll have to go in front of the planning commission again as a public hearing item. I think we'd be more prepared at that point because then we can solidify more of the contracts and we'll know what the impact will be, right?
Well, the public hearing is, yes, you'll probably have several. But I think the annexation process is probably one of the key things to kick off.
Yeah.
Of getting that.
We're not trying to blindside anybody.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We're not trying to blindside.
No, but that just will be part of the process before you get too far
Yeah.
down.
So have you talked to the township about it?
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
That's probably one of the things that we need to do. I don't know if there's an early annexation agreement with the township for this. Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll help with the annexation process. They know it's coming, but part of the annexation process is putting them on notice, obviously. So, but that's a good point. We
Sure,
should
they meet the second Monday of every month.
That's when they meet, the second Monday?
What's that?
That's when they meet,
Yes, township.
second Monday?
So when we did our economic development plan, whatever, and the people all come and give their things, on page 23 of our book, grocery store is number one.
Mhm.
It goes to the grocery store and retail shops and everything else, so the people in Orinoco kind of spoke what they would like to see to come to Orinoco and give us the survey and give us that.
Number 2 and 3.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, but to show that what you've done and listened to is you've done those things, so that's a selling point.
Right. I think we were pleasantly surprised. We were given that
We've read that.
a week and a half
Okay,
ago.
okay, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
that's important for us.
that you show that this is what you wanted,
Yep.
and the first thing's kicking off
Yeah.
is exactly what you people would like to see the most.
Already reading it, you're a step ahead of any other developer.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is you mentioned that the west side is already zoned the way that you need it to be, right? And then you're
Right.
looking to change the east side to allow this development portion. Is there anything that would keep you from doing the west side if the annexation doesn't go forth? I mean, would you still develop the west side? And is that something that may help the annexation process?
Well, at a minimum, I think we'd want to annex the whole thing into the city limits.
Oh, right. The whole, yeah, all of it needs to be annexed into the city, right?
Correct.
Either way.
Yep.
Um,
Because right now it's in the county and it's like
okay.
ag
I
resource.
guess I was meant to be referring to the zoning change, right? 'Cause we need a zone change on the east side, but not the west side in order to do this.
Correct.
And so would you still do the west side regardless? I suppose that's
I think we
Linda and the
would,
team's
yeah.
decision, but
How we develop the east side then might become a question. I don't know if we would stay in the county, if we go that route, I don't know. I mean, that would be something that we'd have to talk about.
sure.
Adam, we're looking at doing it all,
Yeah.
the same zoning,
Yeah.
right out of the chute. And we'd like to do the entire infrastructure and everything at once, that makes sense for everything.
You're bringing in
everybody.
the guys that are digging and.
Yeah, and so forth, so that's our wish.
Yep, cool.
It kind of gets back to the phasing thing too, I think there's maybe more interest on the highway side than the east side, but
Right.
the blocks that you see on that map, I think are people that have expressed interest, am I correct? Joe?
At least, I mean, I have,
Some kind of use fits that, and that's why they're showing up on that map now.
Yep.
Is because they've already said they've got an interest, so.
That list, we have interest, serious interest.
Right.
on
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with that too, is, I mean, if you've got all the interest in the west side already, so money's in order to start plowing through and doing things. If there is a problem with neighbors and Orinoco not working with you to modify the zoning, I don't know, in 5 years from now, when you've got a lot of this done and it's done to the high class level that you're discussing, perhaps the neighbors are far more apt to, okay, let's ease those same folks into this side of Minnesota Avenue, and perhaps it's more amendable at that time, but I'm not suggesting you're gonna run into, headaches here, but I could see that as being a pathway to develop the east by starting with the west if it was.
Well, there may be more of a comfort zone too,
Well, Adam,
once
you'll-
everybody sees one side of the highway.
yeah, and you'll know this like, everybody else, that the west side is gonna be our most expensive side. And the other side will be the least expensive side, because of many reasons. And we still have a long list of the east side that would probably get going just as fast as the west side if it's prepared to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, the convention center, the senior citizen center and some of the things that, I got a schooling center, stuff like that. That's all on the east side, the quiet side, the less expensive side. You know, these other bigger ones wanna be highway, frontage, signage, you know, coming right off 100th Street is important to them.
And that will also be the higher traffic, much higher traffic.
And I do think one thing to maybe be prepared for with community input would be, kind of like what got brought up tonight, some sort of pedestrian crossing ability, whether it's a tunnel or a bridge or a stop sign that just happens when you touch it or anything, but just having an idea, I think for that would be good.
I think visuals too. I mean, you're communicating the high-end nature of how it is, but any sort of renderings of how it's gonna look, you know, density of trees, things like that, when you look at it, I mean, that'll help, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, the community doesn't decide if this happens or not, but you would much rather have people excited about your project than fighting it until the very end, right?
That's why we're gonna hold the meeting.
Yeah, you're doing it right.
With a follow-up question, with the back of the buildings lining up to Minnesota, I'm assuming you're talking about some of the design. Would you imagine that there would be requirements for what the back of the buildings look like as well? But often it gets forgotten.
Architectural control.
The architectural control requires to have so much glass on
Mhm.
the street side of the building.
Does that,
Their architectural group will be handling that.
okay. Cause I believe, and this came up in a previous meeting around, does Orinoco have an architectural committee and,
Well,
but where does that live?
Guidelines
And
that,
guidelines?
that our building services inspects the building drawings too. So they're, it's CMS, because
So they would need to meet
they
that
inspect all of
or
that and
exceed it.
bring them and Joe, they go back and
Right.
make sure.
You're
it
not
follows the
even gonna
guidelines.
see a dumpster.
Phil Carlson kind of compares that on there.
It will have to be on.
Stan Tech to make sure that it meets those guidelines. That's what they did with Herb's building, and they replaced his barn. Make sure it meets.
When plans come in, Stantec looks at that, planning services,
Mhm.
to make sure it does
Is
fit.
it a committee? Like, is it a current, it's not a,
It was formed in 2005 and 6, and it went for a couple of years and come up with this guidelines.
no, it just sits in
The
the,
planning and zoning committee put together those plans back in 2019 and 2020.
okay,
So they've been around for a few years. It's just that we didn't have the sewer system to really implement them.
sure.
But now we have the developments that are canned.
You can do the.
And that's what happened at Dollar General
architectural
store.
guidelines to Answer these people. We can give you an example. Of our architectural guidelines that they have.
Yeah, I think having things like that,
Yeah.
again, examples will be helpful. I think,
Our
I don't know exactly where
objectives do
the,
have no eyesore.
sure. Well, and I think it'll be, like we've been saying, like building a relationship with the neighbors will be important, especially with this neighborhood, but like the bus barn that's put in, I don't think was held to the architectural guidelines, like I believe stone, and there was other things that were supposed to be
They
put,
were held to the guidelines.
but the stone was not part of that.
There's multiple things they get to choose from. So they were held to the guidelines,
Sure,
otherwise they wouldn't have gotten passed,
sure.
so.
I think there might just be some
There's a certain thing though, that when you do things, just remember when you start putting all the things on people,
Mhm.
just remember when you go buy their cup of coffee, how much it costs because of the architectural design, the stone, everything that you make them do that. They're not paying for it. The consumer's gonna pay for it. So there's a kind of a fine line on how you build stuff, you put some stone and do some things to make the building look functional and do things. The people come in and they keep their costs down too. It looks nice, keeps their costs down. I take a look at Dollar General, they wainscoted the bottom with brick, it's steel on the outside. That's a standard building, it's a cheaper building to build like that, the structure to do some of those. And They look very nice if the people that run them don't drive into the side of the building.
Yeah.
And they keep, and they keep their building up and do everything else. It's all kind of property owner. You can build a brand new $3,000 house and they don't mow the lawn. And the other guy's got $100,000 home and he keeps it immaculate. So again, it's all on the property owner, the business owner, but I hear what you're saying.
Be addressed in.
But there's a point where you can tip the scale and say, we want so much that people say,
As Adam knows, the prices are extremely high now and they're not going down when it comes to building anything. This area is not gonna be like a pole shed or a steel box building or anything like that. These will be nicer properties, stick built, no prefabs or anything like that. The lots are gonna be priced enough where it's gonna draw that kind of a building to it instead of a pole building.
Out of curiosity, we haven't fully gone through some of the results relevant to the engagement that we had. But we're the EDA is kind of in charge of, I mean, among the other city organizations as well, but developing the brand of Orinoco. And the aesthetic is one thing, but who we attract as tenants and building owners and businesses is another. So out of curiosity, are a lot of the inquiries coming from large chain type places, or is it from smaller regional boutique type places? Maybe you can't speak to that, maybe you can.
Gas station, of
but
course, is-
A gas station's
Right.
probably big and national.
We have 3 grocery chains looking to come in, only one will come in, but I think most of them will be family owned.
Sure.
I think it's a good way. Would you, Joe?
Yeah, but we can't guarantee anything like that. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
You know, athletic club, we don't know yet
Yeah.
if it's gonna be privately owned. Joe's had inquiries, or if it's gonna be a name brand.
yep. No, and I'm not saying that you can restrict it, but there's definitely a difference between the price alone will probably exclude a whole lot of people on the low end,
Yeah.
right? A mom and pop shop probably
Yeah.
can't afford to go in there. But the big chains potentially can. And then does Orinoco become North Rochester, you know? And that's kind of we're not saying we've fully developed the brand yet, but I'm just putting it out there for discussion.
We'd like to have this nicer than anything in Rochester, because I'm not impressed.
I think what you're bringing up again is the integrity of the community itself as a whole, and I think the work that we have been doing and the
Yeah.
engagement has
What
been
we're
really
looking at
important.
Is to serve the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
kind
think
of
people-
gets back to what we were talking about before. I think you'll recognize the brands, on the west side, they'll be familiar. I guess you could call them chain, probably not that large, we'll just say, but they're brands that you'll recognize from the area. Whereas like on the east side, those probably would be more of your local people, your dentists, your lawyers, your accountants.
Yeah.
Daycare, those would be people that live. here.
Chiropractor.
They live, live in Orinoco or the area.
Mhm.
Those are
Dentist.
the ones that go home at 5 o'clock. So
Yeah, right.
Probably a beauty shop or a barber shop.
Yep. And then the 4 rectangle, those could be, like I said, those are tenants, right? So they could be a local restaurant, or somebody that wants to do a coffee shop, or, that's the intent, obviously for that. If a Caribou comes in and wants to be a tenant, probably still say yes, but on a smaller scale, it's not gonna be a standalone Caribou building, for example.
the big thing there too is how much your development grows is how much Orinoco supports the businesses that come.
Right.
You can build anything you want, a barber shop, you can build all the stuff you want. If they don't support it.
Yep.
But having said that, it's gotta be cheaper to do business in Orinoco than it is in Rochester, and they should be able to lower their prices a little bit to compete to Rochester to bring the people here. In other words, a barber shop, a hairstyle, whatever, doesn't have to spend as much money for rent or the building. Therefore, their price is gonna be $3, $4, $5 cheaper. And then people say, you know what, it's just a little drive to Orinoco. That's where I'm gonna go and do that. So the business wise, the community's gotta support these businesses you're putting forward. And your plan all works and it all sells out. If they don't, then you're kind of sit there. And I believe it will, because I believe you can do business, your branding in Orinoco is we do business cheaper in Orinoco than you can
I'm
the
not
surrounding.
gonna say who, but there's a major chiropractic business that is paying absorbent
Right.
fees in Rochester.
That's what I say, is you draw them out here.
And they,
Your brand is we have quality service and we do it for less. And that will draw you there.
They own their own building. They don't have to pay absorbent.
Correct.
Leasing prices in Rochester. And their cost of land is considerably more per square foot
You're going right here.
than what we are.
You know, that's-
I guess before we end here tonight, I did have some question. I don't know if there's funds to help Linda, just a question I gotta ask, for development, or would they be individual funds for like a daycare or senior center, that's identified, in the study, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's lots and lots of funding out there specifically for things like, daycares, senior facilities, not as much just for the individual shops. And as far as the development, if it gets put in as a development district, I do think that there might be some statewide funding. I've started looking into it, but I will get back to you as soon as I get a little bit more on that, because it's very similar to their, like the BDPI grant, if you're familiar with that one. They have a similar one that's geared more towards commercial versus the industrial, so that's kind of the one I'm looking at right now. And also taking a look at some possible MIF funding opportunities where we'd be able to do a 0 to low interest loan. That would be able to help out with it. That would then help us to be able to start a revolving loan fund on the back end of it, because it would all just stay commercial.
Infrastructure is that
Mhm.
what you're being.
What about this city of Orinoco do a TIF or tax abatement or any of that kind of
I
stuff?
think if you guys had a proposal for like what you needed, like what was actually gonna be needed or asked for, I think the discussion is definitely worth it.
Would Deed have any funds too?
I'm looking at deed, yep.
I know some of those are sensitive to timing,
Mhm.
like you don't want to get too far into it, without asking, or is that kind of the situation in some of these? I mean, because again, this is just preliminary.
Childcare, there is one that's just getting released in the coming days from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation for developing new childcare facilities. So it actually helps with some of the building costs. That might be one for sure that we can look into.
Okay.
And I know that that one's been successfully used in a couple of the other small towns around the area, so.
Chiropractic things along that one.
Probably professional offices or something like that.
I will check specifically for those types of offices. I'll actually take a look at all of the different specific kind of ones that you guys have here, and I'll see if I can't find anything based on them and just get that back.
Okay.
And then I will make sure I get that back to you. I should be able to get a list of that back to you by Friday.
Okay.
So I'll put that on my agenda for Friday.
Also get that to Joe.
Yep, I'll make sure I send that to you as well.
Joe will disperse.
Put it on my calendar so I don't skip over it.
Good. Any other comments? Otherwise, we probably need to continue on with our.
Yeah.
Logan, Linda, Joe, and Lowell, thank you very much for coming out tonight.
That's
an exciting project.
We're excited to work with you. Our objective is to make the community proud of what's coming. For an uncle.
All right, great, thank you.
I'll leave her map. Did you guys want the larger map? I can leave that for you too. I just, again, I stressed it before, but just let you know this is preliminary.
Yeah.
So that they know that there'll be changes. That's really the point, but this is by no means a set in stone kind of development.
We see the draft all over there, so.
Yeah.
We've changed it.
Maybe leave it
times
with-
already.
We've already changed, yeah, good point. We've changed it
We
3
may
times.
not say
Yeah,
that we
he said
know
you
it
can,
is,
yep.
so.
Put it up on.
Well, maybe.
I'm just gonna set it up here for now, so it's not around.
Thanks again for your time.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, good luck.
So you knew my brother? You knew Tom.
My wife worked for them for 20 years.
Okay. Okay, Tom was next to the oldest and I was the unexpected event.
So he was very nice.
You know, I had a brother 20 years older. Tom was 13 years older and a sister 10 years older. So I keep telling everybody I'm the unexpected event. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
We had a turkey farm in Danville Road and the Danville Baptist Church or the up there is, it used to be Danville School and their turkey farm. I remember the little kid going on Thanksgiving to get the turkey at the Danville farm. You drove up and that was in the country. Believe it or not, where it is now, KTTC is where they had the Danville, that's Danville Road. Where KTC's TV and stuff and all that is there, that's Danville Road, but they had their turkey farm. And then the pine trees on 75th Street, when you come to turn, if you're gonna go to Watson or that street, or you keep going straight, all those pine trees, Tom Bandel owned, and started that tree farm, and he owned all that property.
And that's her brother.
That was her brother, who worked at Mail for years. Very nice man, very nice man.
Anybody have any discussion points they want to put at the end of this at all? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I think it's very good that you brought it forward, to come forward, it's really getting our feet wet into something that, we're here to do. And it's a start, it's a picture, it's nothing in stone, but it's talk about the ideas and sell it to the community.
It's a heads up on the interest.
Exactly, yep. And it's a perfect example of why sometimes they come to the EDA before we go to council or to P and Z. It's just so that we can get those first questions in about what the development really needs to be all about so that they can come better prepared when it goes up to the decision makers. So it's kind of a good example of how that all functions.
And is it too early to like put this map out to the community? I know you talked about a website that we'll have eventually, but I'm thinking more in terms of the social media thing, just because on Facebook or Instagram, for Orinoco, you'll have 50 or 100 or, you know, a decent percentage of our population seeing that and seeing it sooner, where if there's a website that they can go to find it, they're never gonna go to the website, or how are they gonna find out to do that? So I'm just wondering, and the only reason, I don't know that it needs to be dispersed early, but there was so many people seemingly irritated by, the Dollar General, you know, and hey, why did this Hamilton thing just come up? You know, so even if it was just a quick blurb on the Facebook, Orinoco Facebook page, say, hey, there's potential, you know, development.
I would just be leery about doing it too soon.
I was gonna say, I think they just kind of came to the conclusion that the guy speaking here and the guy on the end, we're gonna come up with a press release.
Okay.
I think it's also a little bit, like, we wouldn't ever want to do that as an EDA because people can perceive it either way, like, wow, the EDA just got behind this big massive project.
Right, yeah, and I was thinking,
Or,
and I don't know.
no, they shot it, you know, depending on the language that you put into the post and things like that.
Absolutely.
A press release is great. I mean, at the same time, we have to help get the community to go to something that they would promote, you know, so there's a little bit of a, because that's what the community wants, right? Get there, see it. Well, you know, the last thing you want is for them to do a press release and then people are like, well, what press release? I didn't see it. I don't know where it is. So, you know, maybe, I don't know, somehow, some way, maybe it's the Citizens of Orinoco Facebook page or something that's not necessarily affiliated.
Right, that's kind of what I was.
Well, this
Yeah.
packet of information becomes public along with our meeting notes, correct?
Correct.
So this will get posted. I think it's important to go back to the group. We gave them feedback that we think they need to do a pretty extensive engagement strategy and what that is and when they plan. I mean, I think at any point in time, people can share this because it's now public information, but to be good stewards of it, it is bringing forward that it is preliminary and that there are next steps. But I mean, this is probably what's normal about these types of projects is that you do have preliminary conversation.
Yep.
It's lots of rounds of input and pieces and, but it will be out now. It will get posted with our meeting minutes that it's, that this information's there. So it is public.
So EDA doesn't typically post our full packets, but we do post all of our minutes. So all of that I know for sure will be on there. I'll have to check with Jason as to what else gets posted. Because at this point, like, this is like somebody walking into a council meeting and saying, I have this idea. Like right now, there's essentially no official plans, there's no applications, there's no permits, there's no anything. So it's really touchy as to being able to say, we're gonna send all this information out that we know we're gonna be getting a wave of questions coming in that no one can answer. And I think that that's something you wanna make sure that we have the information that we're gonna need for those preliminary questions. Like, when are they gonna be doing this community engagement event? When are they planning on doing, any of these when is the study gonna be done for the traffic stuff? Cause I think that it's important to make sure that people know everything that's gonna be happening. Otherwise, it just leads to a lot of one side, other side, and then you end up with that
Well,
head beating for the entire project.
I think when it comes to this project altogether, Orinoco is gonna have our zoning thing completed before any dirt's ever gonna get moved in this. This would take quite some time before that's gonna happen. So we could work some of that stuff like the turning lane to go into the dollar store, stuff like that. We can have that stuff worked into our code by then, that who's gonna foot the tab on that, developer should basically foot the tab. Do we compensate them for the road and tax abatement or something like that for making that improvement to the road? But do we really do that? Because that part of it is what's gonna make their business work even better, make it more acceptable by the community.
What I see as their first hurdle is going to the township and annexation of this property into the city of Orinoco to annex. That's, if they're gonna do anything, that's step one that they have to do to annex it. And if they annex it and it all goes south, and they're paying city taxes no longer on agricultural land. So that's a big step for them to step forward and say, now we're gonna bring all this land into the city.
Well, there's a process in the orderly annexation agreement where they have to,
Yep.
the landowner has to pass on 4% to the township because the loss of property taxes to the township. So that's all written into the.
Well, what I'm saying is to do that it's a process that they have to go through before this
Yep.
even gets going. But what I see this whole thing, that's one big chunk of property that they had coming in. And once they start to do this, you get it right the first thing, then when all these other lots fill in, you're not gonna have to worry about, because when it's annexed and you get a bank and a grocery store and a gas station and this thing kind of situated, the rest of the lots are just gonna come as normal, by the way. So-and-so's putting up a building, they're moving in, so-and-so, because this right here is gonna be the eye opener, in my opinion, to change the whole way when you drive into Orinoco, this development. And once they start that, that's huge a chunk of property that they've committed to doing. And I can't see the community turning that away because they're meeting the needs of what the community wanted. It's just on how they do it. Just how they do it.
Joe's had his name on that billboard down there for 25 years for a reason.
Yeah.
I think the discussion is good because, this is a new process for our community. I mean, there is a bit of tension right now, like what is the regular process for any other city? We talked about this at our last meeting, like lots of projects come forward through Rochester or other communities when, in this way, ideas come, they go away, new ideas come, they go away. Some move forward, some do not. And there's not the same path. I mean, you have the same stops along the way, but depending on if you're looking for a variance or not, you have different stops along the way. So it is hard to communicate that back to our general population of like, here's where these pieces are. What I worry about though, is that I think that any information that comes into the EDA because of open meeting laws and things like that, it becomes public information. So if there's a way to encourage this group to hold an early on public information session as early as they can, even if they don't have all the pieces, could be a way for them to help start a better conversation when they're getting ready for the next steps. Because once this is out, it's very easy, and what we have found in my professional career is easy to pull out one page and walk around with it and not have context. But if they're able to share a bit more, even as at the highest level, otherwise the stuff is gonna sit. And I know they have many, many steps before it even moves forward. I mean, there's so many steps even before it becomes close to reality, but it is public information now, and I think that's where we'll start to see
Yeah.
swirling and mistrust and, you know, how do we help to make sure that the conversations can happen in the correct way.
I think you've got some good concerns.
I agree too. I think that's,
Mhm.
and maybe we should to help combat the negativism about it, we should probably come up with a press, EDA should come up with a press release and just share in the press release what we know, which isn't very much. But here's the things that all have to be,
I think we should wait for them to provide their press release since it's their project. I mean, because I just worried the second that the EDA puts something out there, like Adam said, if it's coming from the EDA, people will perceive that to be the EDA's.
I don't
this is
think
our
we can put
project.
this map out on Citizens of Orinoco without some type of preliminary official, if they want to do it, I mean, they probably
Right.
should, you're right. But I think just putting this map out there would just open the floodgates of everything. And
Right, because I put those maps in your packets so that you guys would have them in case they forgot to bring them, but those aren't mine to say everybody can have these. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to breach the trust of the developers as well as the EDA. Like, I just want to make sure that everything's being done to make sure all the parties are gonna be happy.
Is there any way that you can, I agree that they do the press release, but say that they have somehow, when you talk to them, that they come to acknowledge that they did come to EDA and talk to us about it in their press release, that they did come and share some information with EDA only on an informational basis.
Mhm.
It kind of helps us out a little bit in their press release. They're doing the press release, and yes, we did stop by EDA and we had a conversation and kind of show them our ideas. And the other thing that I would strongly recommend to go through is if they want, that they put as any development I see, it goes up, they put a picture like this up, and they kind of fill in what lot's been sold. And that opens it up on a regular plywood or a sign to do that on the property saying, and as people drive by, they can pull off and look at to see right on the property up there, what potential they're having to do. That's not on us, that's on them
Right.
to be able to do that, to kind of show the people.
And it is in their plan so that if they decide to move forward with the project, that will be one of the things that they will have out there for
Right.
sure.
Do they own the ground?
Linda does.
Linda does, yeah. Linda owns all of it.
What's her last name, you know?
King?
I think sorry to go back, I'm not trying to like
No, it's
beat this
important.
over.
It's important.
But I'm just trying to walk through the process and trying to pull from other examples that I know is, and I just don't know the rules well enough, like with the. Like when someone walks in a piece of information like this and it's handed to all of our members, becomes a public document. And if this isn't for public consumption, then should we
shouldn't have it at this
be,
meeting.
should it be held in a, should we be going into a closed
Right.
session?
Absolutely.
And figuring out what that looks like
Right.
in that space, because
And I think the message that goes with it is more important than the actual, like, I think, yes, posting this up because they brought it in here, we certainly can, but it's the words that go with it that are gonna matter the most. Like, we don't wanna say like, hey, EDA's meeting with a commercial developer, you know, come find out more at this, cause then it's immediately for half the people, they're going, well, now they're doing this without even telling us, because they're gonna think we're already on board, whereas making sure that those verbiages go in there to make sure they know this is completely exploratory. This is, you know, nobody has signed on to anything yet.
I agree that without even telling us is the piece that's frustrated people in the past. So,
Mhm.
so if it's something that's coming from the Orinoco Facebook page, not from you or I or EDA,
Mhm.
but the Orinoco page just says, we were approached by a developer who's looking at developing this key piece of real estate in Orinoco, just want to let you know. And in the future, they will have a community engagement event.
Right,
Let you
like
know
saying
about-
that
they'll let you-
engagement
we'll let-
event
let
is
you know
what's
when that's
coming.
happening. Yeah, yeah, and so, and I don't mean to stick on it either, but just to get that initial thing out early enough to where people don't feel like it's coming out of left field. But I understand you want to do it in a sensitive manner, but if, as far as I know, it is public now too, right? I mean, I
Well,
plan to go home and try to
right.
live this, right, and then now people start talking. So the longer you have that out, and my wife's talking to the neighbor about this, and the city hasn't said anything or done anything anywhere, that's when you start to create more of that lack of transparency feeling.
I see what you're saying, but I have a difficult time with anybody putting it on Facebook. If it's gonna go anywhere, it should go on the city's website so people can view it and read it. It goes to Facebook, then it'll start getting comments here, comments there. But if it goes to the city webpage,
How many people view that
Just a
webpage?
second, that's beside the point. It goes to city
It's not.
webpage. Well, it kind of is. Goes to city webpage and everybody, it's available. We need, somehow we would need some kind of a tab that of new coming, stuff, something like that, so people can come, what's new? You know, this is
We
coming
could
to.
literally make a tab that says what's new in Orinoco.
Exactly, and it'd be something like that. They can come and view it,
It's not
see
gonna reach
it.
anybody.
Well, I think,
You could continuously share that on Facebook and you could continuously share that on Facebook so that then people can get used to seeing it, but letting people know like, this is now where we're gonna be putting this kind of information. Don't forget to bookmark us or whatever.
I think sharing it is definitely worthwhile. When, not if, when the discussion gets drawn onto Facebook, because it will. And you get all the people jumping to conclusions and all the negativity. It's just a matter of staying, you don't even have to reply for one, but even if you do, replying, saying, watch this meeting. Here, watch
More
this meeting for more
information.
information. Stay tuned for a press release that's coming out, and then more negative comments. Respond with the same thing. Watch this meeting, stay
Watching us
tuned.
today?
What's that?
Is there anybody watching us today?
There isn't.
I don't think there was. I checked with that.
So I have a question, just a question here, and I know it's usually at the beginning that you all guess and input, but we've had a guest here tonight. I just to ask the question is, as a resident of Orinoco, I guess I'd like to know, just what are you, if we put this out on the city thing, is that a positive, would you consider that a positive thing so people know? So that we're not blindsided?
I would almost wait for more information, I guess, my 2 cents. I mean, getting it out there too premature. You obviously know, I'll probably go home and talk to my wife about this too and share some of the information, but to the point, it was very preliminary, I guess, in terms of what they were sharing, and I would almost wait for some of those public outreaches to get more of that information out there, where it's going to P and Z and things like that. I mean, that's, the Hamilton one is a perfect example of that. Ryland, obviously, you were well aware that they reached out to us, we had those conversations. It wasn't anything broad, and then when the discussion started getting a little bit more down the line, I think there's a fine line between transparency and sharing something too early and creating angst unnecessarily. That's just my 2 cents. I do have one quick question I do want to ask as an EDA, because this is the second meeting I've been to, and I'm actually really enjoying these, by the way, so appreciate you putting
Glad you're coming.
sitting here listening. But one of the questions I do have is, and it's not even about the traffic. I think all those questions were asked through Jamie. That road makes me a bit nervous connecting, but that's a different discussion. As an EDA, my understanding is, attracting businesses, getting the right types of things here, knowing what the people of Orinoco want. So listening to them, this is all preliminary, but there was the topic of convention center / event center. So as the EDA, obviously capitalism, you can't stop if it's zoned as such, the zoning changes, you can't stop them from doing that. But as an EDA, is there any advisement to say, we gotta worry about cannibalization, because we have the schoolhouse, and I have no affiliation with that at all, but I know I've seen a few events there. We worry about that, where there's any cannibalization where this out here now undercuts that, and people that have been in the community and doing some of this. Is there a concern there, or is any of that?
Competing with our local
That's,
businesses.
I guess that's it. I mean.
Yeah, quick trip, there's a gas
well
bill.
path of gas and go. I didn't want to go on the path of Casey's, because the gas station to me is a totally different realm, where that's something separate. I guess what I'm thinking is, like I said, with the schoolhouse, where somebody invested money and then was doing something in the community
Mhm.
locally. And this undercuts them. Is there any advisement, or how does the EDA kind of look at that? I guess is one of the things that came to mind.
I think actually that's a really great point to make, because I do think that we can have that discussion as to what of our local businesses do we want to make sure, like, hey, there's probably going to be a competitor in here for X business, and maybe we advise them that we'd prefer them not to go that route. If we think that the community is not going to really want a convention center, though, I do think that at the community events, people
Agreed.
will share some of that
I
too.
guess what I'm saying is, I know you all can't stop them from
Mhm.
doing it if they get the zoning and everything as such. I guess it's more of, what's that involvement, and where's the cutoff point? Because at what point does somebody come to you and it's like, oh, it's the next bright shiny object? They're coming to town, let's bring them in, but at what point is it oversaturation, and then it becomes too much? And I know that's where this all comes in, where you're advising what the community needs, what the community wants, but does that get shared back with these guys that we kind of already got this here? It's somebody local. It's a concern that could come up, I guess. is something
Absolutely.
I see your concern and I think a lot of that would have to be looked at as what is the concept of what's coming in and like the schoolhouse events, it's kind of a niche thing for certain size events. Probably more smaller to medium-sized weddings where an event center would be for probably more large events than.
It's just, and that's one example. I guess I'm just going down the fact of, like I said, every time somebody comes in, is like, oh, here's the next big thing, let's just bring it in, or is there questions, advisement that go back to say, we've got.
I think
we've
it,
got 4 of them,
I think
so-
it also comes to that once the business owner themselves decides like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this as as a transparent community, we can say, well, are you aware there is another one in this community already? Here's kind of their capacity and, whatever, not in a trying to talk you out of it type of a way, but you just moved into competition and
Right.
Is that a wise choice for a business owner to come into that when somebody's already established into a community? I mean, at the end of the day, they have to make that decision, but
A lot of times that happens though while they're planning their business, when they do their research on what's out there already. If
right,
they're gonna pick up, if they're gonna be competing with somebody like that.
you hope.
Yeah.
Well, and I can check in with Joe too, just to encourage him to make sure he's doing that, like that we're watching essentially, like we'll be looking for those kind of things. So I think maybe that'll help him too.
I don't think it'd be a wise decision for us to bring in competition against one of our already pre-existing
Mhm.
businesses in town. So it's something we really need to be aware of.
Yep.
To me, as cannibalization, you bring a third gas station here, someone's leaving.
Well, I have a hard time.
Someone says a gas station up front, someone's leaving.
Well, I see where they put it, and I guess I'd have a hard time going back there for a gas.
Well, it's near the road, but I guarantee if I put a quick trip, they'll drive across the down a dirt road to get to it.
And I think they're looking at this one because they want it to be an actual like truck stop.
I understand that the only one that'll come in would be a quick trip truck stop come there like they got on 65th Street.
Yeah.
I'll promise you.
The gas will go, kiss it goodbye. They're gone. There's no way they compete. And then we gotta look at that piece of property. Well, what are you gonna do with that property now to someone to move into or what they?
We don't have to look at that. The business owner has to.
I know that, but as you talk about Campbell, I'm just saying as they move in and the person's been local here, they're no longer the mom and pop's gone. And the community kind of looks and go, "Oh, yeah." And sometimes expansion things go away. I get
That's
that.
life cycle of business and growth, right?
Right,
But
right.
again, to drive a semi back on that road, go back to that station,
If that's what you're putting.
I don't
in
see
there,
that happening.
That's what you're putting in.
So, and I
Yeah,
didn't ask about that, those, again, not to scale, those roads are gonna be a lot bigger, they will, and they said that they would be able to create visualizations that show semis on the road and how they would maneuver through those areas.
Okay.
And also like where the grocery store is, that could be where they would put something more like a truck stop where it'd be the quick, easy in, easy out onto the highway versus coming all the way in. But
Right.
that's just like one layout that they
Right.
could have.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't really derail your meeting, it was just something that I was kind of
Okay,
thinking about.
thank you
was
very
the
much.
EDA's involvement and just taking some of that stuff into consideration.
Appreciate
Just
you
saying, I
coming.
can't stop it either, but.
Appreciate you coming.
Would it be helpful then, I'll reach out to Logan and find out, hey, can you guys kind of fast track figuring out maybe your timeline for when you want to do community engagement? Because then we'd be able to have the city release a photo and saying, hey, ideas are happening, but community engagement's coming up around such and such a time, please keep your eyes out. But that way, at least people know it's out there, but there's your opportunity to be in there on this is coming. Like, nobody needs to freak out.
Who makes the call on the dissemination of information on the city website?
Usually comes through Jason and Renee.
How do you
They're
feel?
like caretakers.
What do you mean it comes through?
Well, we run the website, so it's gotta.
They put it up.
Put up there.
So you weren't in here, maybe part of it, but we were talking about the possibility of when that development group does a press release. There's a tab or something on the website basically saying new up and coming, or, it's something like as for the community to basically get as early as possible to see information out there. obviously you don't want the appearance that you're behind, that the city's behind anything in such a preliminary raw phase. But, you know, just stating the facts, these guys came to an EDA meeting, presented a potential, they're gonna have a meeting with the public, here it is, that's it.
So I think just promoting the meetings, if they want to promote these community events, we can help them promote them. Just, hey, this group is going to be at City Hall, or this group is gonna be here to discuss these things. That's why I wasn't keen on putting extra information out there, because again, it's that appearance. It's also putting information that's not finalized, like I don't want that. Like, we'll help you promote your event, but beyond that, like,
Yeah.
it's up to them to sink or swim.
Yeah.
So. You know, obviously, from the city standpoint, we'd love to have growth and help foster that as much as we can. I think that's good, and I think you guys all see that as well. What that looks like right now, I don't know, but if, you know, helping promote events, I don't think that's a biased thing. I think that's just putting that information out there, which from what I gathered with the last development that the city tried to go through, that's a big thing. Everybody wants to have that information disseminated to them. So, yeah, however we can do that and help facilitate that.
I would just touch base on when they're gonna do it, and I guess, in my opinion, I let them do the press release, and once they do the press release, then, as Jason just said, my point is, then we help them town hall meetings, whatever we can set the place and do the things, and then they can come talk to the people. I think it's right up on the screen if somebody wants to watch, it's all public. They can come back to it, they can see what we've all talked about. There's nothing being hidden here, everything else. And if someone was to ask me, I said, have someone come with a very preliminary plan and wait for the future thing, because nothing's in stone. It's just they come with an idea. And let them work their idea to the people.
I would probably recommend that they do the community engagement before a full press release goes out, because that's gonna be a bad look. Just my 2 cents.
Even if that was announcing if the press release was like, hey, this is the idea, we're gonna be doing community engagement.
I would say the community engagement takes place before, that's just my 2 cents. 'Cause
How do we advertise the community
that's
engagement
where
though
I think
without
we
it?
can engage the citizens, the HOAs, the Citizens of Roanoke's Facebook page to say, hey,
Okay.
this group wants to meet. If something gets put out, I don't want to do it, but you're thinking of a press release, but it's post bulletin, if that's their thinking, that's gonna rub a lot of others.
Okay.
That's just my
Well,
2
you know,
cents.
they are interested in, sharing it with planning and zoning, so
Yep.
maybe.
No, I agree.
Maybe one of the things to do is to put it out there to, come to the next planning and zoning meeting. They're gonna present a concept to the planning and zoning.
Well, and I know they were
The only
talking
concern I
about
have
doing
is-
community engagement before a lot of that.
Yeah, the only concern I have is that it's still in the township, you know, they haven't started the annexation process, and that's really kind of that should be the first step. We're kind of
Put the cart before the
putting the
horse.
cart before the horse here.
Yep.
Not that it's wrong, it's just
Yep.
that is a process that really is gonna be determining.
But I think that from their perspective, they want to know they've got support from the city before they go get annexed, because if they're not gonna have the support, then they're not gonna build it.
Right, but typically what we should do is, and honestly, I'm almost thinking maybe it should come from myself or you before it comes from Wideseth, that the city is looking at the potential of an annexation of this particular area, just to give them a heads up that not gonna be coming for the next couple months at least, but you know,
Part
that,
of the process.
yes, but we want to give you guys a heads up that this is coming, and usually that's pretty standard protocol for.
Or is it okay to just say, the economic, more along the lines of promoting economic development? Tune into our economic development meetings. We have interesting people coming and presenting interesting things all the time. So if you're interested in what's going on in Orinoco, and, you know, tonight we had an interesting presentation from some people that are interested in doing some development. Go into the website or the city site or the Facebook page or whatever and see what they proposed, or watch the meeting. Maybe more from that perspective as trying to, I mean, I understand you want to tell everybody, but some of it they can pick up and learn on their own if they're if they are interested, and a lot of people are. So where do you get the information? Well, it's on the website. Check it out.
Want to add
It's
to
not a
that?
secret.
To add on to what you're saying, I think the feedback I think we got from the community is that they're not aware when decisions are being made.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, the tension, is it feels like at decision points, they're not clearly communicated or they were made prior. So I think build on to that piece. If we, like, I really appreciate the conversation today and even just listening to what everybody's talking about, that if we can continue to encourage people that have ideas to come to the EDA as a standard step, I think our community will begin to realize that this is where they can come for that type of information.
Absolutely.
And then we can clearly communicate that these are the next steps and we're encouraging early engagement and these are the places. So whether it's the next stop is a pre-discussion at P&Z or a
Mhm.
pre-discussion at city council. I was just reflecting on, I think the group knows that I work for DMC for Destination Medical Center. I was thinking about our own process. And often when we have developments come through, we have a preview of it so that the community and boards can give input and then there's more engagement and then it comes back for formal review and those types of things. So it seems to align, I was just like referencing, it seems to align well with other processes of other cities that have been in of
Yep.
preliminary discussion and then making sure that there's engagement that follows and then you have decision making, and that is what's widely communicated as well.
And now that you say that, I just got an email from Renee, Monday that I need to get my little EDA blip to her for the, what is it, quarterly? Is it quarterly or monthly?
Quarterly.
Quarterly.
Fall
For the
newsletter.
quarterly newsletter that goes out. And I've been kind of wondering what I'm gonna focus on other than the release of the report, but I think maybe this could be one thing that I could put in there, like putting an invitation to community being like, hey, don't forget to come to our meetings, everything, this is where you can find things. So maybe putting that on there, so I've made a note about that, that's something I'll try to put a good word in on it.
That goes along with
links.
promoting both economic development and brings in the community
Mhm.
engagement.
Yep,
I think this is all really a good point because the EDA potentially could be looked at as the top of the funnel.
Mhm.
And, you know, we don't make decisions. All we do is try to make recommendations based on community feedback and based on what we know P and Z and everybody is going to, you know, try to guide you towards. So we're recommending to people, this is how, these are just more things to think about relevant to it. And if the community comes to it, they can see that we're taking their best interest into consideration, you know, relevant to what we're saying and proposing. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Also by encouraging, like what we saw tonight, encouraging that just of our own citizens. If people want to start business, anybody wants to start business in Orinoco, maybe this is the way they want to start by just start with economic development. We can give you the resources that you need to make that final decision.
Obviously, the risk that people run is, you know, Linda owns this property, so she's already secured the property. No one else is gonna go in and do the
Right.
same thing.
Right.
If you're someone that doesn't have anything and you have an idea, you maybe don't wanna share your idea with the public, you know, you kind of keep it a little bit quieter, you know, so I don't know what the avenue necessarily
Yeah.
for that is. In not such a public forum.
that's me. That's what you guys literally hired me to do is I did go to that meeting that the city had. And then I'll take all that information so that I can bring it back to you guys. But if there was, for example, if Joe told me one of the names, you know, in confident of he didn't, but if he did about one of the stores, I wouldn't be able to express it in a public meeting if I'd already made the agreement or if he had made the request, sorry. But if he had made the request for me not to make it public knowledge yet, then I would be bound by that. But a lot of times they'll come and then I'll give them all the information that I have. For example, with it starting a business, those kind of things, a lot of times we're able to even do some small business trainings and those kind of things that then the EDA doesn't itself have to be physically involved with, but then each month when I come back to you guys, I tell you guys what I've been up to, who I've been meeting with, what I've been seeing. And then we make all of our decisions then based on what's kind of gone on. I will never, ever make a decision for you all, but I will certainly engage with individuals to get their information so that then all their information comes here to the meeting before they meet with everybody formally. So there's like that informal versus formal process. But I kind of have that outlined a little bit on the website as well. You know, just saying like, hey, if you've got any questions, reach out to Rebecca. If it's not her that's gonna do it, she will get you to the right person. And so I think it's just kind of like a quick, easy funnel way for everybody to reach out to the full EDA all at once.
And this whole thing that she come with, you're right, she does own the property's secured. She has shown good faith because to put this out, what she's done has cost her money already. They don't draw this stuff up for free or lay this out for nothing. And for them to keep doing the research to go through with what they want, they're very expensive things. And I think that her idea that she wants to do, as in our meeting, when we talk about the branding, she's kind of answered that question of what she would like to see come here to the residents, that it's just not a hodgepodge thing, that it's very well laid out, very well planned, and very well thought out of what they want to do. And I envision if they go public with this and they do the press release, that's gonna open some people that might have been sitting on the fence and saying, wow, the first person just stepped in, Linseth, just stepped in, and they're developing this. And if we want a piece of the action in Orinoco, we better get off the fence and come in and secure a piece of that property, or if there's some other land out there to develop, to get into Orinoco, so we get in on the head end. I fully see this as for her to step up with the money, and it appears to me she's got the money to be able to do what she's doing.
All right,
Let's
so
kind of wrap a bow around this, what we're gonna do here. So,
development wise, just so everybody knows, within the last 45 days, there were 2 new commercial permits that were pulled. Both were re-signage permits, one from the city and one from Casey's General Store. So those are the only 2 commercial permits that were done in the last 45 days. And then I just kind of wanted to get a backlog for the first time. I let you guys know, and then from then on, I'll just, since our last meeting, what's happened. Community branding,
is it Casey's? What was the other one?
the other was from the city.
What?
From us.
City. Oh, the city actually has to get a permit to put a sign.
From
We
the
gotta follow the rules too.
So the next thing we have is community branding. It's something that was talked about in our report. It's also something that I know a good number of council members have mentioned in passing. So we decided to make an application for what's called the Small Towns Grant from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. It's a $10,000 grant that can be put towards this type of project for community branding and pay for those types of things so that it doesn't have to come out of taxpayer dollars. So I did meet with a colleague of mine who does this type of work, and we met to discuss kind of the process of how it works, as well as the costs. So we've submitted that application. It was due yesterday. We did have a letter of support that came from the city council to make this submission. That does not mean we're necessarily going to do the city branding process. But if we get awarded the grant, then we'd be able to decide if we want to accept it or not, based on what the pricing actually ends up being. But it sounds like the process would be, there'd be community engagement involved with that. There'd be surveys involved with that. I believe there'd be business visits. There'd also be a small group of people made up of different stakeholders. So there'll be at least one person from P&Z, EDA, city staff. And then there'd also be some people pulled in from the community to be able to just not have too many cooks in the kitchen, essentially. So we'll get all the data gathered together, and then all these different stakeholders will get together to make whatever decisions for the final planning. But they'll have recommendations as to logo colors and vision statements. You know, if we're going to have a mission statement for the city, for some of the different departments, those are things that they can help us with. And that would be kind of the process. So we did make that application with the council's blessing. But again, no guarantee that we actually go through the process, but I know that it is something that we've been talking about. And part of that could also be the city's website change. That can be a part of this branding process. All of that kind of can go into the same thing, so.
Did they give you, your colleague, did they give you a potential project cost?
The project cost, it looks like it would be approximately, there'd be like 2 phases, so there'd be the community engagement phase, where they would basically be coming and getting all of the data and giving their recommendations, and that would be approximately $6,000 for the first phase. The second phase could be up to 8,000-ish on a regular basis, but it depends on what type of returnables we're looking for. You know, are we gonna ask them to do the entire web page for us? That would obviously cost more than if we were only having them doing, you know, some recommendations for what type of marketing packages we wanted to put together, or if we wanted them to actually develop the marketing materials. So after phase 1, we'd be able to decide, do we even want to do phase 2? Or do we just stick with this and do it ourselves? So we'd be able to make the further decisions halfway through the process, so we wouldn't have to fully commit to the whole thing until we finish that first bid.
Up to 14,000.
Yep.
Is there, Jason, is there anything relevant to the signage that may go into the rebrand? That you don't want to put up a bunch of signage and then get rebranded?
No, it's just that sign that's out there in front, we're replacing that and just
The letters?
putting letters on the side of the
Okay.
building that says City Hall. We're doing some new number stuff, and internal placards and things like that in the building, so. It's just simple, basic lettering is all it is.
Okay.
So,
Making sure.
with that though, with the website, with our current company we utilize for the website, we do get a upgrade, if you will, so to speak, or a redo of the website every few years. And so we will be having that completed here within the next month or two. I'm hoping by the end of September, maybe mid-October, the website will look completely different.
Right, and that was just an
So-
example of one of the things that they can work on with us,
But
so.
with that, there'll be some more functionality with it. It'll be an updated version from the Catalyst, who's our company that we use. That's more, hopefully more user friendly in the long run for citizens and stuff like that, and more appealing to go to than what it is now. So,
All right. So I will let you guys know as soon as I hear back on that one. That one typically takes about 30 days before we hear back, so hopefully by our next meeting, I will know. There is another grant that came out. It's the Rural Improvements Grant Program. This is also being released through the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation and it's the Taylor Foundation. It's for people in southeastern Minnesota. You do have to be a CEDA member in order to apply. So you have to have a CEDA contract in order to apply for this grant. So obviously we fit in there, but it's up to $25,000 to put towards something like community spaces or an ADA compliance components like ramps or seating, playground equipment, park shelters, food shelf equipment. It's due Thursday. We were looking at potentially putting in some walking paths in, what was the?
Wood Hills Park.
Yes, the Riverwood Hills Park. But when we looked at the actual cost of those, that's getting closer to like the 60 grand mark. So we know that we don't have that kind of funding sitting around to be able to match. So I did want to check to see if there were any other potential park projects or anything that you think might be a good one that we'd be able to apply for, again, knowing that we can always turn it down, but I just hate to see $25,000 in free money not even get tried
Is
for.
there anything that can be used in this building? Is there anything that needs improvement in here that?
We got a roof leaking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's community
It can't ever be for general maintenance, so like,
roofs.
yeah, that wouldn't, no,
roofs.
we wouldn't be able to do that. It's usually something that's gonna be a new initiative or a new, a new installation of some sort. So like if we were looking at getting rid of a piece of playground equipment because it's broken and replacing it, we could try and replace it with that money.
Is that what we'd like to do down at, River Park, since it
Yeah.
costs us so much to, there's quite a bit of damage down there from that.
Did things have to get replaced down there?
Was that,
Did things have to get replaced down in River Park?
no, we didn't have any damage from this last, we did some mulch thing, but we took care of that already under the swings. But all that's been submitted part of our FEMA project, and hopefully we'll get FEMA funding for that. So the 25,000, that could go towards,
Park improvements, like park shelters and playground equipment, ADA compliance components, and that could be for here at the city hall if we wanted to try and do some ADA compliance updates. Any of our public spaces, because it has to be coming in from a city, so it has to be based on the public spaces,
Is there a time frame for which that money has to be used?
12 months.
And you have to indicate what we're using it for by Thursday.
Yep. I don't have to have all the details. I don't even need a detailed budget. I just need an idea of the costs. You know, the difference between what we already have on hand versus anything else. And I can also continue to look for other funds to help back it up. We just have to make sure that we have a 25% match to be able to go forward with it. But to keep in mind, with that 25% match, I'm also part of that. So any of the work that I do, I can put down at $98 an hour. And that's money that we're putting in and matching already with. So it kind of just pays for the time that I spend working on it.
Is there anything with the fire hall over there? That they need an improvement or something
We're
else?
talking about two facilities that need to be replaced in general, City Hall and Fire Hall. Those are two completely major projects that I think.
I got a development here that I've had to do a development. That's just out of curiosity. You're right up here.
We do have to spend it in 12 months
What
though.
about,
Can I throw some, I know,
Yeah.
I talked with Kane, the restrooms at Orinoco Park, that facility down there
yeah,
is in desperate need of,
There you go.
or Alice Park too,
Flush
both of
toilets.
them.
something like that, cause it used to be a shower house, I think, and some other stuff, and honestly, he said it's kind of one of those, because of the campground there used to be like a part of it was a shower house restroom.
well, we have a shower, but yeah, we have talked about sewer and water for the campgrounds, but then that was,
But that whole thing, he said, needs to be redone, could be redone.
Well, it kind of needs to be redone because it's part of the WPA project to start with, is what it is. It was from the Works Project Administration back in the 30s.
Is there anything that was value engineered out of the parks, like the playground
Thank you.
equipment?
Give me that grant. Thank you for coming.
Did we take anything out because we couldn't afford it? Do you know? Like, did we remove a slide or did we not? Like, I wonder if there was a plan for something that we ended up not doing as another option. If that doesn't work, I like the bathroom idea a ton. but-
I did reach out to the parks head, to let her know that we were looking at this grant and then also to ask her if she had some other ideas, because I kind of explained the situation, but I haven't heard anything back yet.
Is the park over here? It used to be the Olmsted County Park and you guys took it over. I don't know if it's Orinoco Park or.
That's what it is, on local park.
The Orinoco Park. My question is, you've got one shelter there.
Mhm.
Okay, and you ask about improvements. Is there any way at that shelter, if you could add on or?
Put a sidewalk going up to it, so somebody in a
Whatever. Well, I'm
wheelchair.
just saying, if you're looking for this grant money to be able to walk up to it, but, or actually be able to put. Well, I was down in Stewartville, 2 weeks ago, and theirs is enclosed. It's a very nice facility, has some, I'm just saying, if the 25,000 there and you've got the shelter there. Is there any way that your shelter to make it more or put up another shelter? Is that shelter, I don't know how much it's used. Is there sometimes it's used and and if you had another one, another family or that was there, could be undercover to do something and add an amendment, to that down there, or improve it.
Just make the thing handicap accessible would probably take
the
25
path it
grand.
to
I was gonna say, because I
Yeah.
think for the shelter, we would need a lot more commitment from the city as a whole to be able to say we would be able to fund it.
But to get a wheelchair pushed up there, you couldn't do
The
it
walking
now.
path, that's for that, I think maybe we can make that work, so I can put that down.
I'm just saying is when you went to the park there to do something that you've already got a structure there, if it needs some
Well, the
improvement.
other thing from that shelter house down to the play equipment, it's a hard hike for this 64-year-old. I can't imagine if I had some kind of a disability or something, trying to get my kids down there to the,
Are you talking about down to Riverwood Hills?
No, just down to the, down.
For the
From the shelter house.
Okay.
Shelter down to the playground.
And they have some benches sitting out there that
There's
you
no
have.
steps, there's no, it's just, you know, good luck getting down the hill.
It's just stumbling over oak tree roots.
Right.
Okay.
So it's probably about a 200-foot path from the parking, or from the circle.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
car and a path over.
And I can get all those dimensions right off of the GIS server, so getting all of that information I can grab.
It was just a thought process that if you can do it, if you can improve yourself, why, if,
Yeah.
let's say you get the grant, but if we do, you do. And
Yep.
you're improving something.
Yeah, and it's a very, very quick application. They're not asking for a whole heck of a lot, mostly I think just because they've worked with CEDA for so long that they're just looking to see which projects they want to fund, but
So this Taylor Foundation, this is the gentleman that owns the Minnesota Twins and.
Was it Timberwolves?
Was that?
Glenn Taylor?
It was a Timberwolves.
Glenn Taylor.
Glenn Taylor, yeah.
Yeah.
Owns the cars.
He owns the printing.
Yeah,
Byron.
I think that'd be an excellent.
everyone seemed pretty comfortable with me looking at doing
Yep.
the accessibility over at Orinoco Park. Beautiful.
Might be the thing to do.
Thank you for looking those grants up.
Yep, absolutely. Then for old business, community engagement, everything's up on the website now. We were gonna review all of our report recommendations today. I don't know how much you guys want to do at this time.
Can I make a motion because of the time, it's getting 8:45, make a motion that we move that over to our next month's meeting to the agenda, because it might not have so full. And bring it up at that time. I put a motion forward that we move that to the next meeting.
I second that.
Item number
I
6.
think that's an excellent suggestion. It's been 2.5 hours.
6A.
so
Yeah,
I think
Say
that's, we
aye.
do need to spend some time on that because there's a lot of information there and Rebecca's done a great idea about bringing in the different housing and the developments, and as you look through that, some things are in process. Some things we plan to do, some things we haven't done anything on, so there's some nice things in there that.
There's two different sets of information that's gonna be in your packets that you have right now that weren't in the ones that I originally sent out.
right.
One is several pages long, it's double-sided. I apologize, there aren't page numbers on it, but that is just a list of all of how the recommendations that were made specifically for the EDA. So anything that was in the back of those sections and recommendations that's only EDA oriented, that's what's on those pages. And then I have a work plan document that's 4 pages, but front and back, so 2 for you guys. With just some ideas of different things that we can do that I think would be, whether they're high, medium, or low priority. I've got them all marked on there and color coded. And I'm mostly just gonna be looking then, that's kind of where I would love to be able to get feedback as to, yes, this is the thing I think we should work on first, or, you know, you've got that marked as medium priority. I don't think we need to worry about this for the near future. But finding out what your top projects are, I think would be the best thing. So if by the next meeting, if everyone could at least pick out like their top 10 or go through and prioritize them to your liking, it'll make maybe our discussion go a little bit easier when we meet up next.
I will give our guests tonight a lot of credit for already looking through our engagement report.
Absolutely.
We have a motion on the floor.
So it's a clarification. So this will be the September 24th meeting.
Yes.
Just need to vote on that, so.
Any more comments?
Aye.
Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right. Coordinator's report is included in your packets for you to review at your leisure. I was gonna ask you about the newsletter, but it looks like I already got something to put into there. I do need to add one last thing that we do need to talk about quick tonight, and that is the very last page in your packets. Probably the only reason Jason is still here. We do need to look at being able to make a request to the city for a budget. I put down there the items that I already know. For example, I know what the CEDA contract was last year. I know what it will be this coming year. I put in some guesstimate estimates on different things that we may end up spending money on, or like the income also for sources, saying, you know, I'm pretty sure we'll be getting some grant dollars in for that. Trying to make a decision on what to ask for as far as what type of projects. The hope was that we'd make it through all of our project listings tonight to be able to know what we could prioritize to ask for, specifically in our budget. Some towns will give their EDAs approximately like 30K on top of their contracts to be able to use to put towards, a fix-up fund. Some people allocate $10,000 a year so that people can do facade improvement programs. Some people just end up building that up so that when a big project comes up, you have the funds to be able to take action. Because if something comes up and you have to ask for it, it may be several months before we'd even know if we have the money, and then by then the project's gone. So having some funds is good. The EDA is allowable by state law that we will have our own account, so we are able to spend our own money up to a certain amount. After that, we go directly to city council before we do anything. But the smaller ones would be for, say, we wanted to host a community engagement event. We don't need permission for that. That we could do on our own. Playground equipment, no, that goes to council. So it's like if that kind of explains the kind of differences in those. So
You suggest, because we're just starting up, if we said 15,000, that should be more of a fix-up fund, or would that be like a revolving loan fund start?
well, a revolving loan fund, you're typically not gonna get applications for less than like 20, 30,000. Because they're looking at doing a startup. You can get smaller ones, but even just for the first couple of years, just doing it at 15, that at least gives you something to build on.
That's what I'm thinking, it's just a
Yeah.
starting point.
Because then I'll keep track of all the expenses, and then at the end of the year, when we do our annual reports, there'll be a listing in there of all of our expenses for the year, all the grants that we got in, and so then as we track those, it'll make it a lot easier to think about budgets moving forward when we've kind of got something to go on for past stuff.
So I'll make a motion that we add at the start of a revolving loan fund, 15,000.
I'll second that motion.
That gets it closer to a $50,000 budget with sources of 15,000 towards that 50,000, but I think.
Okay. So we'd be like the 15,000 on top of,
35,973.
there we go.
It's currently listed there.
Okay.
Where'd you get that 35,973 from?
Add them all up.
31,473 and add 4,500
For
to
the
that.
salary that we pay.
I
Okay.
just think that just shows to the community and, you know, that we're serious about the EDA, and 2 or 3 years, we may have.
We're looking at like 47,000 total.
15.
What's that?
So like around 47,000 total for 2025? Because that'll include the 31,000 for the CETA contract.
Yes, it would include.
No, it's
It would, the 50, the,
the number he
So-
said that Paul questioned, plus 15,000.
plus 15, so it's 50,973.
Okay. So even if we just did an even 50, I'm sure that would
50 is good.
be sufficient.
That would
Well,
include the
it's-
CETA contract and.
And obviously, council can take that and give us more, give us less. I mean, we won't know till later.
I'm putting together the budget, so this is all a hope and a wish right now, but it needs to be presented for council because we have 2 deadlines when doing city budgets. First one's end of September. We always shoot high for the budgets because after that, the final budget's due at the end of December. And the reason you shoot high is because you can't go back and ask the state and county for more money, but you can always take money away from what you preliminary requested. So, you know, we want to make sure that we're shooting for the moon on that September budget. And then over the next month or 2, city council will whittle that down to an appropriate budget size. So we just want to make sure we're there. So it's one of those things that, you know, yeah, it may go in there and, you know, may look like a sticker shock at first, but it's one of those things that if we can budget it and get it, it's going to be good. And if we can get something that I think it'll be beneficial for the EDA, because I talked with Rebecca and there are, you know, other cities this is a new EDA. EDA is new to us. So, right. So, but these other cities, as they're established EDAs, they are able to do a lot more because they've got that funding behind them, which is what I'd like to see for this to help make you guys successful.
Yeah.
So what'd you have for number, Alan, for the
50,000,
50,000 even?
Yeah.
Can I just add on to the conversation? I think,
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I know like we're trying to meet deadlines and it seems like pieces of mind. It seems like some sort of exercise that once we get through our priorities and our work plan to look at how does that get reflected into a long-term budget, I think would be really important. So like, as we work through pieces and we look at prioritization, we may find that we need to fund ourselves a bit differently or look for other grants or other ways to build our budget. I know we haven't done that work yet, so it's hard to do that exercise, but it could help us understand what does 3, 5, 10 years look like, and then how do we start to build towards that?
Absolutely.
So maybe we just note that if the group is comfortable, that at some point we kind of go through an exercise of what could that look like? So I think that could help our council and others understand like what we're working towards and how does that reflect.
That's the cool thing, because right now the city is, it's, in a way, it's falling behind a lot, but it's catching up in a lot of ways. So, we're working on, a couple months ago, got the okay to go ahead and look for a quote for comprehensive plan. That's just that comprehensive plan. Where do we see the city 3, 5, 10 years from now? And when we have that, then the committees can work off of that and go, hey, all right, this is where the city wants to go in 10 years. What projects can we start looking for? How do we start budgeting for that? And that's what helps make all those grow. So it's all starting to come together. It's not there yet, but it is. It's all in the progress. So absolutely.
Perfect.
So is there a motion? Is there a second for that? Do we have to? Is there a
Yeah, we
second
have
on
a
the floor?
I don't think we actually need a motion for this one. I think Jason just is gonna put that in the request and,
Okay,
yep, I don't think we even need to.
okay.
Well, just wanted input from you guys so I could know what to throw into a budget line item.
You can go now. I'm sorry.
I'm here. Finish out the meeting.
So when you do the 50,000 for the total, then the revolving loan fund dollar is $14,037.
Well, and this is just kind of a worksheet, like it's nothing that's,
Understand.
because, if they can come from legal fee guesstimates and all those other things, so. Otherwise, any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Beautiful.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have to walk on items.
What the?
We have to walk on items.
Oh, do we have more walk-on items? I'm like, the budget was the only one I thought.
I don't say anything, so that's why.
Paul, you get me scared.
What do you have, Paul? Once you brought it up.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
Done.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 It's officially the longest EDA meeting so far.
Yeah.
But I do feel like that was incredibly productive.
Not gonna be the last.
Yeah, that's my, that's